Every time. Yeah, it always is. Give me 1 second. I said, "Okaeri nasai." Now it's embarrassing, now that I'm doing it the second time. But I was also saying, hello, how is everyone? My throat's a little, a little cloggy, as a warning. Or as a, excuse me, as a heads up. I am not sick. I had vegetable and grilled chicken pizza for dinner, and the cheese always makes my throat all sickly, but I have iced green tea, so I'm okay. So, before we start, hello Naller, hello Feltronen, ready to pop some boogies, ready to light some novels. Hello Hikage, hello Bepop, hello Flighty Finch. Good evening, I'm really glad you liked that bunny. Yeah, even though you drew me as, or not you requested that I be drawn as some kind of foot fetish rabbit, the art was very cute. You didn't ask for the feet? Oh, it just happened? Uh-huh, sure. I believe you. Hello, Cream. How are you? Flair's karaoke. Oh, I forget she uses the same BGM as me. I rarely watch Flair. Furea. I rarely watch Freya. So... Hell yeah. Hello... Kair Fet. Oh. Is that Bleed the Freak backwards? It took me a second, Jesus. Anyway, has anyone seen Flair and Takako in the same room? Much to think about. Much to consider. Well, we can get started then. We're getting into the good part. Chapter 3 is called No One Lives Forever, and the narrator is Masami Sawatome, so the guy who was on the double date, that he's on the student council with the main character of the first chapter, whose name I already forget. Your cringe decade old skirt. No, it's okay. I said it because I was like, how do I phrase this? Boogiepop. Are we not at the good part? Oh no, not yet. Not yet. Oh, are we talking about embarrassing old usernames? I can't partake in this conversation. I would rather die. I'll take it to my grave. That's pretty bad. Zombie Slayer 900. Hey, that's pretty sharp. Ouch! I got cut on the edge. Your dad made— wait, that's sick actually. That's so cool. It was supposed to be Swordmaster 437. Your dad was like, that's lame, you're gonna get bullied. Here's a real username. Zombie Slayer 900. Your dad's based. Alright, let's see. Let us begin. Nice! What a start. Very cool. First-year student Saotome Masami first fell in love when he was 15. Until that point, he'd never opened his heart to anyone and simply remained a nice guy to the people around him. Needless to say, this was a major turning point in his life. I promise I'm not going to be clearing my throat the whole time. Holy crap. Give me 1 sec. Let me mute and try to take care. Alright, we may be good. Hello, Cronus. Audio only again? That's fine. I sometimes when I'm driving home or to work, I'll leave my friends' streams on audio only, so same for me. Loud maid throat clearing. Nuh-uh, I muted it. For sure. Anyway. Saotome-kun, you free Sunday? Asked his classmate Kusatsu Akiko shortly after the start of the second term as they were performing their after-school cleaning duties. No plans to speak of. See, Sachiko has some free movie tickets, and she said we should all go together. Akiko had dark skin and high cheekbones. She looked at Masami, waiting for an answer. We? Masami asked, leaning on his broom. This lowered his face to her line of sight. He was tall, with a face that had just enough charm to get him compared to pop idols. But it was always a different person every time, never fixing on one resemblance. You know Sakamoto-kun from Class F? He made a pass at Sachiko and got the tickets, but she's a little nervous about going in alone. So, you need a discipline committee member as an escort? I know Sakamoto pretty well, and I don't want to be a drag. Oh, you don't need to. Well, maybe you do, Kusatsu Akiko said, smiling weakly at him. She was pretty forthright with everyone else but Masami, but she couldn't contradict him directly because she was in love. Masami was well aware of this, and privately he was annoyed by it, until now. But today he simply smiled back at her instead. But if you just want me to tag along, fine. Not like I've got anything better to do. If we run into the guidance teacher on patrol, I can probably talk us out of trouble. Kusatsu Akiko's face... Why are they calling her by her full name every time? Her face brightened. Really? Well, the truth is, Sachiko's secretly pleased that Sakamoto-kun asked her, so I don't think you'll need to intervene. Whatever. They both laughed. You could never call Kusatsu Akiko a good-looking girl, but when she smiled next to the far more evenly featured Masami, she gleamed like a still image from a soap opera. Your old username's X accidents on purpose. The X. These are such emo usernames. Based on tales from Sonic. Hello, Thunder. You still use your username from when you were 10, you're gonna Kermit. No! You can't. You have to embrace it at this point. It's become your brand. When the four of them met at the station, they appeared to be a very close-knit group. They ran into Masami's senpai on the discipline community. Every time. This is going to happen tonight, too. Every time I read committee, I'm going to read it as community. From the discipline committee, Takeda Keiji. And he took one look at them and asked if they were double dating. There was clearly a hint of romance in the air. The movie was a big Hollywood action movie, part 3 in a series, neither harming anyone nor doing anyone any good. The only part that Masami enjoyed was a bit where a minor villain was shot in the chest and knocked over backwards. His arms were flung out, to the sides, and he slid backwards like a figure skater. In Masami's eyes, he looked light and free. They left the theater, and a passing group of teenagers glared at them murderously. Walking quickly, faces grim, they all carried bags with large square lumps inside. Cram school? Asked Noguchi Sachiko, this evening's instigator. I hope we never end up like that. Oh, the bottom line or two is cut off? Hold on. 1 second. Thank you for saying something. Yeah, the bottom line is. Chotto. Alright, that should be good. Let's see. I hope we never end up like that. Yeah, Kusatsu Akiko nodded. Masami remembered her letting it slip that she couldn't go to college because her father's company was about to go bankrupt. That's a long time from now. We ought to enjoy ourselves while we can, Sakamoto Jun said. That's such a main character name. And I know it isn't, but... Trying to distract Noguchi Sachiko. Yeah, just forget about it. Just live your life. Not like you can live forever, Masami said breezily. Oh, look, it's Yurihara from our school, Noguchi Sachiko said, pointing. Yurihara Minako, 2nd year, Class D. She was one of the best students in the school, and legend had it that she consistently beat out the best students at other cram schools on their practice tests. But she didn't look at all like the brainy type. Heck, she didn't even wear glasses. Instead, she had long, straight hair with the kind of shine that no amount of treatment could ever give. It matched her slender face, giving the impression of a Heian-era princess. Yurihara Minako passed by them as they whispered, walking at a slower pace than the other students, and vanished into the cram school. She's so relaxed. You can just see the aura of her genius. You know she was scouted by some prep schools, right? Sakamoto said with a knowledgeable expression. Really? They can do that? From the fuss that they made, you would never have thought that they were talking about a senpai. All the while, Masami remained quiet, smiling to himself. He didn't even glance at Yurihara Minako. They had promised not to let their eyes meet in public. Anyone up for karaoke? There's a place near here with a great track list, Kusatsu Akiko said brightly. She was in a good mood now that she was out with her beloved Masami. Hold on 1 second. Okay. In the karaoke box, Masumi sang easy pop songs, one that had been all the rage up until recently, but had passed their peak, and everyone was starting to get sick of them now. He almost always sang that sort of song at karaoke. He preferred an American band called The Doors, which had broken up ages ago, long before he was even born, when the lead singer died of a drug overdose. But he never told anybody. The Doors weren't in a lot of karaoke machines, but he never sang them, even if they were. He had a good voice, but since everyone was a little tired of his selections, they never really seemed all that interested. I linked to at least 7 different... Okay, cool. Nice. Goodbye. Sorabada. He had a good voice, but since everyone was a little tired of his selections, they never really seemed all that interested. He always applauded other people's performances, never forgetting to keep up appearances. He never stuck out, was occasionally a little scorned, but he never made anyone jealous, and no one ever realized that he was keeping them at a distance. He bought drinks for everybody. He took them directly from the tray when the waiter brought them, and even passed them around himself. He put Kusatsu Akiko's drink in her hands. Nobody saw him drop a small tablet, about 5 millimeters across, into her cup before he handed it over. Yurihara Minako had synthesized the tablet, and as promised, it quickly dissolved in the Diet Cola. Kusatsu Akiko never noticed a thing. The first girl that Saotome Masumi fell in love with was a second-year student, Kirima Nagi. He told her this in May. She rejected him quite harshly. "Sorry, but I don't have the time," was all she said. Is it because I'm younger? No, not really. You're normal, right? Me? I'm nothing but trouble. Thanks, but sorry. Oh, okay. He was far less hurt by this than he'd expected. Quite the opposite. He found himself rather relieved to be brushed off coldly. It was 2 months before he identified the source of those feelings. "Hey, Saotome, you take Kusatsu home. I'll take care of Noguchi," Sakamoto whispered in Masumi's ear, as their time in the karaoke box ran low. "Sure, good luck," Masumi whispered back. As the 4 of them left the shop, Kusatsu Akiko suddenly proclaimed, I don't feel so good." Her face was white as a sheet. "That's too bad. I'd better take you home," Masumi said, putting his arm around her shoulders. Hang on, Saotome-kun." No Gucci," Sachiko cried, all flustered. She was about to be left alone with Sakamoto. "You two have fun. Don't worry. I'll look after her." But... "You heard the man. Let him go," Sakamoto said, caroling. As the men had planned, they split off into 2 pairs. Noguchi Sachiko was steamrolled under Sakamoto's promises that he wouldn't try anything. Afterwards, he did get her to a hotel where they had relations, but Noguchi Sachiko's parents found out, and her old-fashioned father stormed the school, tracked Sakamoto down, and cursed him out in front of everyone. But in all the fuss, the 2 of them never had a moment to notice the events that followed. They had completely forgotten they were ever with Saotome Masumi that night. "Bye." "Yeah," Masumi replied as the 4 became 2. "I feel sick." Kusatsu Akiko's voice grew gradually weaker in Masumi's arms. Masumi never spoke a word. He simply hauled her along as if she were a piece of luggage. The silence was deafening. Kusatsu Akiko was in no condition to be insulted. Her face was well beyond pale. You could see the blood vessels under her skin. Not caring, Masumi dragged her into the back roads. All they did was leave the lights and noise of the main drag for a narrow back road, but it was as silent as a graveyard, seemingly light years from the bustle of the city. Before them was a giant parking garage that had failed in its bid to reopen and had thus been abandoned. The land was intended to become an office building, but the owner had been unable to find any clients, and had had no other choice but to make it into a parking garage. As luck would have it, the owner had then gone bankrupt, and it was now just another of the country's forgotten bad debts. Masumi slipped between the railings of the surrounding fence, holding Akiko under his arm. She said nothing. She had already stopped breathing. He dragged her up to the 7th floor of the parking lot. This far up, there was no chance of them being disturbed by thrill-seekers. Leaving Kusatsu Akiko on the ground, Masumi stuck his face outside. It was pitch black all around them. Even if a normal human on the ground had been looking upwards, they could have never seen him. He looked at his watch. It was a digital watch with a backlit screen. Unlike radio watches, it had the advantage of not making a sound. The time confirmed, he nodded to himself. Staring into the blackness below him, he waved his hands. There was a small noise from far below him, like someone pushing a tack into a board. Within an instant, a human shape appeared in the air in front of Masami. It was a girl. The shape slid past Masami, entering the parking lot. It landed right at the top of its arc. There was no sound as its feet touched the floor. The girl had jumped all the way to the 7th floor. Oh, hello, Among Us imposters. Is this the part where the boogie pops? It is indeed. They do that multiple times in this story, even. She turned towards Masami. She had long, bountiful black hair plastered to her head and a cram school bag in her hand. It was Yurihara Minako. I know, I'm incredibly talented. It's totally not just me looking down. Were you successful? She asked. Masami nodded. Over there. He said, pointing to Kusatsu Akiko's corpse, which lay on its side, no longer moving. That one? The other girl was better, Yurihara said, frowning. Agitation could not be further from her mind. Not really. This girl has friends all over. Lots of friends from junior high. Masami replied, voice devoid of warmth. Does she? Then fine. You know more than I do, Saotome-kun. Yurihara handed her bag to Masami. He took it like an obedient little hotel bellboy whose only job was to serve. Yurihara stooped down in front of Kusatsu Akiko. Seems like a waste not to eat her now, she said, her beautiful face contorting. Yeah, but if we use her, you'll be able to assimilate 4 or 5 more in no time, Masami chuckled. For now, we wait Manticore. Human society makes it hard to move, Yurihara the Manticore said, sighing. She lowered her face next to Kusatsu Akiko's. Oh, please. Okay. Her long hair started to get in the way, so she held it back with her fingers and kissed the corpse tenderly. Her tongue pried the body's mouth open, forcing a gaseous form of the essence manufactured inside her body into Kusatsu Akiko. Watching this monstrous, sinister spectacle unfolding in the darkness, Masami was entranced. As if he felt sexual pleasure, his face was even more ecstatic than at the moment of ejaculation. For 30 long seconds, Yurihara kept her lips pressed to the corpses. Finally, she pulled away, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. Her lips were bright red, but not from lipstick. The color did not rub off on her hands. The color of her skin was so sleek she appeared to be wearing makeup, but this was also her natural state. When she had copied the real Yurihara Minako, she had copied the makeup as well. She should be revitalized momentarily, Yurihara said with a satisfied smile. Masami said doubtfully. To make sure, he kicked the corpse lightly. Its fingers twitched. Good. Oh, have a good night, Thunder. Have fun at work. Bit by bit, the entire body began shaking violently, as if it were lying on top of a high-voltage electric fence. Then the torso shot upwards, as if on a spring. The eyes and mouth popped open, and a blue liquid, neither tears nor saliva, came pouring out of them. Whoa, can't let that touch me, Masami said, backing away from the sweet scent wafting off the volatile liquid. Yes, for humans it will work like a drug. It would not do for you to become addicted as well, Saotome-kun. Yurihara placed herself between Masami and Kusatsu Akiko. Look here, woman, she ordered. The no longer dead Kusatsu Akiko did as she was told, slowly rolling her head towards Yurihara. The flow of liquid had stopped. I've given you power to corrupt humans. Use this power to supply me with more humans. In normal society, Yurihara's words were unthinkable, but the previously dead girl nodded. Corrupt them well. When they suddenly vanish, we want the humans around them to assume that this was the logical next stage of their recent poor behavior, including yourself. Behind her, Masami nodded proudly, like a parent whose son had just correctly answered a question on Visitor's Day. Yurihara whispered, You have no memories of what happened here. You went bad of your own free will. 5 minutes later, Masami was walking along the street, once again supporting Kusatsu Akiko. Her fainting spell ended, and her eyes opened. Where are we? Ah, good. You're awake, Masami said, stepping away from her. Eh? I was asleep? Oh no, why didn't you wake me? Kusatsu Akiko said, quite flustered. I shook you several times. Oh no, I'm sorry. I wonder what... She tried to figure out the last thing she remembered, but she couldn't remember a thing. Obviously, it never occurred to her that she'd died and was now merely functioning as a puppet, thanks to the stimulus of a drug. You're pretty heavy, you know that? It was hard work carrying you, Masumi said sternly. Kusatsu Akiko turned bright red, but for some reason she wasn't that hurt by his words. They parted ways in front of the in front of the school station. Yeah, they parted ways in front of the station. See you at school tomorrow. Yeah, don't tell anyone about tonight. Especially, she started to say a name, but trailed off. She felt like there was a boy who she really didn't want to see her in an embarrassing moment like this, but for the life of her, she couldn't remember his name or what he looked like. Especially who? Masumi asked with a knowing smile. Never mind. Kusatsu Akiko's love had vanished with her memories. I had fun today, Masumi said kindly. I clicked. Okay, there it is. Masumi said kindly, but she simply replied, oh, as if she didn't care at all, and turned her back. She felt like there was a big gaping hole in her heart, but she had no way of telling that her will and spirit were swiftly vanishing. Masumi paused to watch Kusatsu Akiko venture into the station, then swiftly turned on his heel and walked back into the city. Yurihara was waiting at the Tristan coffee shop. She was seated in a booth towards the back. It went well? She asked. She was wearing glasses and had her hair in a sausage style. Masumi knew that Yurihara could control her hair at will, but these quick hairstyle changes always took a moment to get used to. Yeah, her emotions are already fading, Masumi replied. He sat down and ordered lemon tea and marron cake to soothe his sweet tooth. Without knowing what she's doing, she'll make all of her friends try a drug that even she doesn't remember getting. Like a sleepwalker in the night, she'll regurgitate the fluid made by the cells in her body. She won't even try to figure out where it comes from. Her brain is shrinking, and she can't be bothered to make decisions on her own. I did say it was sausage style, but that's because I couldn't pronounce the word. They looked at each other and giggled. From the side, they looked like any peaceful, harmless young couple. But Saotome had already sacrificed the lives of 3 girls to Yurihara. The monstrous man-eater known as the Manticore. They had met 2 months before, just before summer vacation. Masumi was a member of the tea ceremony club, largely because it never did anything. He had heard that it was a good idea to have been a member of a club in high school when it came time to apply for universities or jobs. Yurihara Minako was a member as well. Much like Masumi, she hardly ever bothered to show up for the club's infrequent meetings. One day, it suddenly started to rain in the evening, despite blue skies all afternoon. The whims of summer. Masumi had not planned to go to the club meeting, but since he had no umbrella, he thought he might as well kill some time in the tea room. He turned around at the shoeboxes at the entrance to school and went back inside. Oh, hello, Nano. How are you? You just burnt eggs and ordered... Oh, well, I'm so sorry. That sucks. What kind of takeout did you get? Anything good? Also, hello, Lop. I don't know if I said hello outright. The tea ceremony club didn't have her... Oh, also, hello, Cheetah Man. How are you? Sushi, pizza, and gyoza. Holy shit, that sounds bangin'. What a good dinner. All at once, I hope. The tea ceremony club didn't have a room of their own. They simply borrowed a room that was usually used for student guidance, as if it was the only Japanese-style room in the school. The faculty sponsor was the assistant principal, Komiya, and he was much too busy to ever show his face at meetings. That day, the room was deathly silent, and there was no sign of any other students. Next to the door was the Sea Ceremony Club attendance book. If your name was written in this, it appeared that you had attended the meeting. Even if you rarely came, as long as your name showed up in the book, you were treated like an active member and could stay on the rosters. Masumi opened the book and was about to write the date in his name when he realized there was already an entry for that date. Someone else was already here. Yurihara Minako. Even if she had gone to the bathroom, it was strange that she hadn't left her bag. Before now, Masumi had never even had the slightest interest in Yurihara Minako. She had a reputation for brains and beauty, but had never mattered to him in the slightest. And, like many a man before him, he'd always been baffled by the idea of beauty. He'd already lost his virginity in junior high to a girl with a face covered in zits, who was widely reputed as being rather ugly. The relationship was kept secret, but less because he was embarrassed and more because he just didn't want to listen to everyone else's shocked commentaries on the subject. He didn't think anything at all about dating an ugly girl. In fact, after she started dating him, her pimples vanished, and actually she became quite pretty. She soon left him for another boyfriend, but Masumi wasn't particularly upset. He had never actually loved her to begin with. He simply used her to relieve his sexual appetites. Instead, she ended up crying and apologizing, even though it had been her idea to break up in the first place. Masumi no longer remembered that girl's name, and he couldn't remember Yurihara Minako's face all that clearly either. He knew she was supposed to be good-looking and that she had good grades, but that was about it. "Senpai, you here?" he asked, taking off his slippers and stepping onto the tatami in his socks. He opened the shoji leading into the inner room. It was less of a room than a storage area for tables and cushions. The moment he opened it, his eyebrows leapt upwards. In the storage area, Yurihara Minako was upside down against a pile of cushions, face twisted around so that it faced the same direction as her torso. Her head was on backwards. Her neck was broken, with her spine clearly severed. Her eyes were open and empty. She wasn't moving. At all. She was dead. The first thought that flashed through Masumi's mind was relief that he hadn't written his name in the attendance book. He didn't want to get mixed up in something like this. He took a step backwards. This saved his life. A hand with razor-sharp claws passed through the air just in front of his face. Some hidden killer had attacked him. What? He looked up. There was a naked girl clinging to the ceiling, hands and feet thrust in the cracks between the wood paneling. He thought it was a woman, but only assumed this because he couldn't see any male genitalia between its legs. Later, he was to learn that there was no genitalia there at all. The girl grinned. "You saw me," she whispered. "Now that you've seen me, I cannot allow you to live." She continued as if she were sharing a joke. If there had not already been a corpse lying beneath her, he wouldn't have taken her seriously. Masumi was stunned. He simply stared blankly up at her, immobile. If he'd been a girl, he would have heard the legends. He would have thought, "It's Boogiepop." She moved like the wind. She kicked Masumi in the chest, sending him flying into the opposite wall before he knew what had happened. "Gah!" he yelled as his back slammed into the wall. He moaned in pain. Ugh. And was about to pass out, but he knew deep down that he couldn't let himself succumb to his body's frailties. She laughed softly as she approached. There were traces of mud and leaves on her body. The mountains behind the school ran deep. She had probably ventured through them and come out at the school. She looked like a majestic wild animal. She had a strange beauty about her, a strange fearlessness he'd never seen anywhere else, an established aloofness found only in things that were beyond human understanding. Masumi was stunned. He simply stared blankly up at her, immobile. If he had been a girl, he would have heard, Oh, I thought it clicked, I'm sorry. Yeah, Masumi simply stared up at her. Nice timing. I had just thought that it would be better to copy a male than a female. I shall take your shape, she said, reaching out towards Masumi. As if freed from possession, he blinked and said, "What?" He frowned. Copy? Yes, I shall become you and blend into human society. No one will ever be able to find me. Huh, his face scrunched up, but not because he felt despair at the sight of his approaching demise. No, the next thing he said was, "In that case, it would be far more effective to keep me alive." He sounded a little put out by this. The girl frowned. Why? Oh, it's just that you'll have a much easier time as a stuck-up teacher's pet with no friends at all, like our little Yurihara Minako here. If you try to take my place, people will notice the difference. I've strived to maintain at least mid-level popularity here. People know me. He sounded deeply disappointed by this, because he was. He wanted to be killed by something much more powerful than him. Even with Kirima Nagi, he had not really wanted to date her. He'd wanted her to kill him. Such was his nature, and for the first time he understood this truth about himself clearly. He didn't know why exactly. There was obviously nothing out of the ordinary happening at home, and he had no childhood trauma to contend with, like Suema Kazuko had almost encountered. But there it was, clear as day. A deep search for something kind of reason would have revealed it. What is this sentence? A deep search for something kind of reason would have revealed it as a reaction against his lifestyle, away from to fight against his deliberate pretense of mundanity. But that was far too shallow a reason to satisfy a psychiatrist. People like Masumi, who had a fetish for indirect suicide, were not particularly unusual. The naked killer looked down at him, baffled. Until now, anyone who had ever seen her had felt nothing but hatred and fear. But this boy showed no signs of either. Why are you so quiet? You do not struggle? You do not beg? She found herself asking. That's because I love you, Masumi answered, honestly and quite sincerely. Huh? For the first time in her life, the girl was dumbfounded. You were right, Saotome-kun. Yurihara Minako's form fits my needs well. Nobody thinks it's strange if I don't talk to them in class. She was always like that, apparently, the manticore said in the dimly lit coffee shop. Her face so perfectly matched Yurihara's that for all intents and purposes, she was Yurihara Minako, as the former owner of that name had long since been erased from the face of the earth. I thought so. The classes at school resemble some sort of game, but this studying for exams is utterly pointless. I just have to read the explanation and I can understand anything. You're much smarter than most of us humans, then. Even Yurihara Minako's parents haven't noticed the difference. They communicate with her so cautiously. Are all humans like that? Mostly, but be careful. There are a few egoists who think other people are a part of themselves. My parents, for example. Shall I kill them for you? Yurihara suggested airily. Not yet, it's still too early, Masami replied just as evenly. True. We must be cautious until we control the world, she giggled. Exactly, Masami grinned back. At this point, the waitress brought the lemon tea and cake Masami had ordered. She overheard them talking about controlling the world, but just assumed that they were talking about some sort of new video game. She did, however, think that the couple was far too horny and that they should get a room before they started making out right there in the restaurant. They can't even be out of high school yet, but they're already acting like newlyweds. They're all over each other, she thought. She was still reeling from a harsh breakup, so she slapped the bill on the table a bit roughly and left. Masami carried on. Should we make ourselves any new slaves beyond Kusatsu Akiko? Yes, if possible, I'd like 2 or 3 more. Too many and we might get noticed, though. But at some point, we'll need them on a larger scale. Better to test the process out now. I just can't. I know, it's not fair. How you doing, Richter? Their plan was simple. Remake human society with themselves at the center. Yurihara certainly had the power to make that a reality. She could become any human she wanted and could make any human do her bidding. The idea was Masami's. He offered to cooperate with her, but when she told him of her powers, he found himself rubbing his hands together with glee. We can use that, he said eagerly. When she heard his plan, it sounded quite reasonable, so she agreed. All she'd thought about before now was her own survival. She'd never actually thought about the rest of the world. And more importantly, she'd always been alone. She'd been cloned as as an experiment and had no family of her own. The only person who had ever told her, I love you, was Saotome Masami, whom normal society would classify as a crazed lunatic. But there must be agents from the institution pursuing me. What should we do about them? At the moment, all we can do is hope that they don't find you. Give it a little more time and we'll be able to fight back. And demolish anyone who wishes to erase me as a failure? Exactly. You're no failure. You're going to be the new ruler of the world, Masami said forcefully. Yurihara rested her hand on top of his. Saotome-kun, you're my prince. The man-eating monster stroked the hand of her Mephistopheles while sweetly whispering, I love you. It may have been twisted, but they were unmistakably in love. I love this power couple. As they planned, Kusatsu Akiko gradually began to come to school less and less often. Her family was falling apart and was behind on her tuition payments, so nobody thought this at all unnatural. She got her friends hooked, and Yurihara and Masami took them. The first one they nabbed was Suzumiya Takako. The first one they nabbed was Suzumiya Takako, a second year at Class F. It was easy to take her. She and her friends always gathered in seclusion, and all that Yurihara and Masami had to do was follow them as they left and simply take them down. Unfortunately, they were unable to alter them in the way that they had Kusatsu Akiko. They died, but they did not return. It seems it requires a very delicate balance. Good thing we decided to experiment first, they said, whispering in the darkness. Oh, it's okay. We're not that close after all. They'd been killing high school girls from Shinyo Academy and other local schools, one after another. To cover this up, they laid down a few red herrings to throw off the authorities. Once the president had been established, the rest of their work went smoothly. There were no signs of fuss at school. At Shinyu Academy, there had been a special meeting and a resulting morning lecture, but that was all. Missing person reports had probably been filed with the police, but they were buried in a mountain of missing girls totally unrelated to them at all and swiftly forgot about. I know. Rip Takako. Nelson salute. F in the chat. The students that ran away were all slackers to begin with. Oh my god, I'm having a stroke. The guidance teacher told Saotome at the discipline committee meeting. This generalization was so insensitive to the students' individual circumstances that the committee president, Nitoki Kei, stiffened her tiny body and turned her cute, childish face downward. I'm gonna drink some tea. Her cute, childish face downwards to hide her steaming glare. But Masumi was taking minutes, so he wrote the gist of the comment down in his notebook. Disturbance in behavior precedes disappearance. As he wrote these words, he was expressionless. He never let even a faint smile steal across his lips. Everything was going exactly according to plan. Still, he was left expressionless. Nothing the teacher said and nothing happening around him could change this. He had killed 5 people without so much as remorse, and here he was, still acting like an ordinary student. But when the teacher stated that, incidentally, the infamous Kirima Nagi failed to arrive this morning. Make sure to keep an eye on her, here? No telling what that girl's plotting in the shadows. Masumi's cold heart skipped a beat. He didn't show it, but even now that he had the manticore, hers was one of the few names that could affect him. Kusatsu Akiko's behavior became strange a month after she'd been altered. Even when she came to school, she seemed particularly out of it. When people spoke to her, she barely seemed to notice, much less reply. Uh-oh. Masumi figured that Kusatsu Akiko had begun to break down much faster than expected. They couldn't leave her here like this. She was clearly evidence. If she collapsed somewhere and was taken to a hospital, they would surely discover her condition, and the institution that made Manticore would soon find out. So, Yurihara was forced to eat Kusatsu Akiko, and the first stage of their experiment ended. Unfortunately, they had still not managed to recruit a second subject with any real success, and it was putting considerable strain on both Masumi and Yurihara's relationship. Damn it, why doesn't it work? Yurihara yelled, growing ever more high-strung. It's nothing to worry about. We will have many more opportunities. I know that, but, Yurihara said, then looked up at Masumi. I'm sorry, I'll get it right next time. We should wait a while, Masumi replied calmly. Why? I can do it now, Yurihara said, almost shrieking, her voice clearly echoing through the empty parking garage. That's not the problem. We're reaching the limit of what we can do in the school. We have to look for more prey elsewhere, but we need to prepare, not only for more experiments, but for your food supply as well. We've taken care of both of them at the same time so far, but you need other forms of nourishment, don't you? He said gently, his tone showing a marked contrast to the horrific meaning behind his words. He rested his hand on her shoulder. All right, we shall do as you say, Yurihara nodded obediently. Oh, it's no problem, JJ. How you doing? Always happy to have you in chat. The day after Kusatsu Akiko vanished, Masumi got involved in something a little out of the ordinary. During break, he was on his way back from returning a slide ruler he'd borrowed from the teacher's room, when a female teacher came flying around the corner, extremely flustered. You're on the discipline community every time, oh my god. You're on the discipline committee, aren't you? She asked, her face brightening the moment she saw Masumi. Yes, Saotome, 1D, Masumi replied. Thank God you're here. Please keep watch. Don't let her get away, she shouted and continued on down the hall. Masumi looked puzzled and walked in the direction that she'd come from. It was the staff bathroom. Since it had been a female teacher, he poked his head through the door. He had no particular enthusiasm for ladies' restrooms, but he didn't hesitate at all in his actions. He simply walked straight inside. But once inside, he was badly shocked. Oh, it's you, Saotome-kun, said Kirima Nagi in the flesh, standing smack dab in the middle of the white room, nodding at him. Senpai, what's going... He didn't need to finish. The moment he asked, he noticed the unlit cigarette in her hand. That's... Yeah, well, you know how it is, she said, making no effort to hide it. But you gotta get ready for work this time with... Oh, I'm glad your laundry shit got cleared up. I hope you have a really fun stream tonight. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. It should be pretty easy. Break into Electric Boogiepop. There's a character in a later volume named Spooky Electric or something. They call him Spooky E. Yeah, well, you know how it is. They caught you, didn't they? But why? And in a place like this? Whatever. Nagi gave him a half grin. It made quite an impact. It was this sort of impression that had made him fall in love with her in the first place. Senpai, he tried to talk further. She cut him off. Sorry again about that other thing. I still think it's better for you this way. Oh, no, that's... Oh, hey, you were 1D, weren't you? Yeah. Were you friends with Kusatsu Akiko? Masumi thought his heart was going to leap out of his mouth. Not really, he mumbled. Nagi glared at him. You knew her? I went out with her once. On a date? No, I mean, it was like... he said, scrambling to form a coherent sentence. Nagi looked at his face and grinned again. Not what I'm asking. You notice her acting weird lately? Well, yeah, I guess so. How long? Maybe 2 or 3 weeks? Matches up, Nagi whispered to herself. Masumi felt a shiver run down his spine, but he didn't let it show. Matches what? Oh, never mind, Nagi said evasively. Something happened to Kusatsu? If there's anything I can do to help, senpai, he pressed. Nah, it's nothing important. Of course it's important. I mean, this is deliberate, isn't it? He said, taking the cigarette out of Nagi's hand. Hey, Saotome-kun, Nagi said, troubled. It's something big enough that you're deliberately getting yourself suspended, isn't it? Let me tell the teachers. They won't do anything. Teachers are nothing but wage slaves, she said coldly. Why is Nagi like this? Masumi couldn't argue with that. Wait, maybe this book is good, actually. Masumi couldn't argue with that. He had suggested it precisely because he had the same opinion. If they left things up to the teachers, everything would be forgotten in no time. Hey, guys, I want to stop and ask if you're picking up the theme of this novel, which is, adults don't fucking help anything. All they do is enforce standards that do not fit the situations given without listening to any of the children in question. Nothing is ever about their well-being, and any difficulty they encounter is always left up to them to take care of. Wow, sounds just like real life. Yeah, sure is. From what I remember of the anime adaptation, part of the reason I dropped it was because they put, like, no emphasis on that at all in what I watched, and I was really, really confused by it, because, like, that kind of theme is tied through the whole thing, whether it's, like, K and Keiji both being in, like, the student council that doesn't let students date, and they all have to check in, but none of the teachers actually care. No one's checking in with the student council. They just ramble and then tell them, okay, go do your shit. No one is allowed to date. Everyone does it anyway. The student council doesn't enforce it because the teachers say, okay, you're not allowed to date. And everyone says, okay, and looks the other way. It's just no control over anyone, but also they offer no help, so why why would they have this control to begin with? Then he persisted. Nagi took his hand and held it tightly. Thanks, but no. You're normal, and you shouldn't have anything to do with this. But, he said as 3 male teachers... This female teacher was so scared of Nagi that she sent 3 large male teachers to deal with them. 3 male teachers came stomping into the ladies' room. You again, they shouted at Nagi. Nagi was unaffected. Masumi tried talking to them, but they didn't even look at him. One of them took the cigarette out of his hand and said, "This is evidence," thrusting it out towards Nagi. She said nothing. She was handed off to the guidance office like a wanted criminal. Hold off. Masumi followed after her, looking worried, but one of the teachers told him to go back to his room, so he simply watched them leave. There was nobody else around, and the color in his face slowly faded. From down the hall, he heard the office door slam open. All Masami could do was turn and walk away. There was no emotion left on his face. Nagi's choice of words kept echoing through his mind. She'd said, "matches up." All he could think was that it matched up to the first girl who had run away, Suzumiya Takako. Nagi knew something too close for comfort. His mask cracked just for a second, letting out a glimpse of his true face underneath. His eyes were withered, inhuman, like a man who had just wandered in the desert for a week with no water and let sand creep into every pore in his body. "Kirima Nagi? Why would she?" cried out Yurihara when she heard Masami's story. They were in the pool changing rooms, where thankfully nobody ever dared to come during winter. "I don't know, but she's clearly caught wind of something." Masami told Yurihara about Nagi 6 days into her suspension. During that period, he was stalking the girls that they'd planned next to entrap and kill. It quickly became obvious that Nagi was taking them down one after the other, all of Kusatsu Akiko's junior high school friends. And today, he'd seen her attack Kinoshita Kyoko and make her promise never to take drugs again. In the shadows of the school, it was clear that she was playing out some sort of hero fantasy of her own. "Why? We did everything right!" Yurihara cried out hysterically. "Yes, we did, which was why she hasn't caught wind of us yet," he said quietly. But inside, he knew just how precarious of a position that they were in. If they'd been just a little bit late in disposing of Kusatsu Akiko, Nagi would have most certainly deduced what was wrong with her. It had been a very close shave. "We can't kill anyone else from Shinyo Academy. We don't want her suspecting that you're a student here." "Why don't we just kill her?" Yurihara suggested. "Not yet. I don't know how much she knows or how she found out. We need to know that at least." "She needs to die. We won't leave any evidence behind. And she's crazy. Nobody'll notice when she vanishes." It was obvious that they were in the same class. Yurihara knew Nagi all too well. But her current parents are very rich, and she's got several 100 million yen in the bank. She disappears, and I guarantee you that it won't be put down as a runaway. When money gets involved, there's no telling who'll come out of the woodwork. That's how human society works. Killing is the solution to everything. Well, when you're the Manticore, why not? Yurihara remained silent. She looked at the floor, bit her lip, and then whispered petulantly, "Is that the only reason?" "Huh? Is that the only reason you won't kill Kirima Nagi? There's another reason, isn't there?" "What are you talking about?" "Saotome-kun, don't lie to me. You're in love with her, aren't you?" Masami looked away. What? Why do you think that? "Am I wrong? I'm right, aren't I?" she asked as she looked up and glared at him. Masami started to say, when suddenly, "What are you doing in here, Echoes?" a cheery girl's voice asked as the door to the changing room swung open. From the stripes on her uniform, it was clear that she was a third year, and a bright and sunny girl at that. Oops. My mistake. Sorry," she said, scratching her head. "Ah, don't!" Masami yelled, pretending that the girl had caught them in the middle of a romantic moment. It was okay, though. She hadn't overheard them. Sorry. You two have fun now," she commented, smiling. She was clearly blushing from embarrassment as she started to duck back out the door. But at that moment, Yurihara's body shot forward like a bullet. She let out a hiss like a king cobra and sank her teeth into the back of the third-year girl's neck. There was a sharp cracking sound. "What?" cried Masami, trying to get between them, but he was already too late. She'd bitten through the girl's spine, killing her instantly. It was over before the girl even realized what was happening to her. Killed off my favorite character. "What the hell were you thinking? I just told you not to kill anyone at school," Masami yelled, turning on Yurihara. But when he saw her face, his manner changed. She was white as a sheet and shivering violently. How is he here?" she whimpered with her latest victim's blood spattered across her mouth. "What do you mean?" "Him! Echoes! He's here!" "Who, or what, is Echoes?" "My original, the over-evolved man." She hugged her hands to her chest, but that didn't stop her shaking. "Calm down. You can explain later. First we have to get rid of this body," Masami yelled, glancing down at the girl's corpse. Looking closely, he recognized her face. "She's Kamikishiro Naoko?" She was one of Nagi's few precious friends. That was how he knew her. Nagi had taken a year off in junior high due to illness, but she'd been in the same class as Kamikishiro at the time. Why is Nagi's friend... Is this just a coincidence? No, it can't be. He felt the last piece fall into place. Just as they had disposed of Kusatsu Akiko in the nick of time, once again fate Stay Night had given them a desperately needed chance. Don't worry, Manticore. The advantage is on our side, he smiled and gently put his arms around her trembling shoulders. Eh? She questioned as she looked up and was greeted with a warm and knowing nod and a luminous smile. Sipping my tea. And that feel when no mad-eating monster yandere GF. They carried Kamikishiro Naoko's body to a secret room in the basement. Yurihara leaned over the corpse and began disposing of the evidence. As he watched, Masumi grinned. I'll make sure you live through this. I promise. Whatever happens to me, it'll be worth it. A single line of a song ran through Saotome Masumi's mind. For some reason, it was not a song by his beloved group, The Doors. He had forgotten the exact name of it. It was just a song that he had overheard somewhere and barely remembered. He couldn't even remember the whole line, just a snippet echoing throughout his mind like a broken record. It was a song by a band that wasn't anywhere near as famous as The Doors. They were a freak band called Oingo Boingo that were famous for their weirded out tunes. The name of the song was No One Lives Forever. The poppy, cheery tune didn't match the sinister name, nor the blood-ridden lyrics. Masumi began singing under his breath. No one, 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 no one. His smile continued until the rest of the phrase, lives forever, came back to him. The smile contained more than the radiance of one prepared to sacrifice his life for the object of his affections. There was a hint of evil and of deeply personal pleasure to it, too. Is that a JoJo reference? What did I say? Karuno's a huge, prog rock fan. He just doesn't fucking hide it at all. In front of him came a sound like wind whistling through a crack in the wall as the man-eater consumed the girl. Fuck this guy having good taste in... Yeah, I forgot. When I first read this, and I had a friend read it, I lent them my omnibus, and I was like, oh, did you get to the... Have you met Saotome, Mr. Man, Kisme just don't understand. I gotta play along and, pretend to get along. Nobody here listens to The Doors. I used to joke about that meme, the guy at the party. No one knows I'm famous on the internet. That meme. I wanted to draw a Saotome version, have him be like, I bet no one here even listens to The Doors. You're such a baby. Why, Finch? Are you spooked? It's a good novel. Chapter 4. I Wish You Heaven. Kimura Akio, second year. Oh, it's my girl. I'm Saotome. God, I hope not. Congrats on your monster engagement. Kamikishiro Naoko is dead. You should forget about her, was all that was written in the letter. It looked like a computer printout. What? I picked up the envelope and studied it for a moment, but all it had listed on it was my name, Kimura Akio. Yeah, I'm not spooked, I just have to work myself up to read violent stuff like this. Oh, I'm sorry. At least it's all in text and it's not something you're looking at. Good October reading. My name, Kimura Akio, and my home address. There was no return address at all, and judging from the stamp, it had been posted in the same town where I attended high school. At first, I thought it must be a prank by one of my old classmates. My little fling with Kamikishiro Naoko had kind of become public knowledge after it ended. But it seemed a bit late for that. 2 full years had passed since I'd last seen her, and this kind of prank seemed a little irrelevant now. Still, she vanished abruptly during my second year, and I still don't know why she disappeared. I doubt anybody knows. Had anybody ever really known what had gone on in her head? I had trouble reading some sections of Fate. That's okay. In the Fate route, when he goes to the church basement, I felt so sick that I was, nauseous. It was really hard to read. Kamikishiro Naoko and I first hooked up in a pretty strange kind of way. This all took place not too long after the spring term had begun. I was smoking a Castor Mild around the back of the school one day at lunch when a boy and a girl showed up. Luckily for me, I was hiding behind a tree, so they didn't see me. There was kind of a long, meaningful silence, so I took that opportunity to hide even better, hoping to get an eyeful. But they barely even looked at each other. They just sort of stood there, fidgeting. Aha. Just as I got it figured out, the girl opened her mouth. Did you read the letter? She asked, clasping her hands. He said evasively. The whole thing was kind of old-fashioned, and I was just about to lose interest when the boy suddenly looked around nervously and asked, You are alone, right? Huh? She blinked, and so did I. Most people usually come alone at moments like these. Though, of course, there are always some losers that need their friends to goad them on. So, you're not gonna beat me up or anything? He asked, relieved. What, was this kid afraid of girls or something? Then I finally noticed. His slippers were blue, and hers were yellow. Our school was set up so that each grade had a different color. I was wearing green ones. The boy was a first year, and the girl was a third year. No, nothing like that, she exclaimed. The moment that I knew she was my senpai, she started looking extremely grown up and hot. I'm pretty picky when it comes to girls, but I could tell she had on makeup that subtly made her eyes look bigger. But it was natural makeup, so the teachers would never notice. It was also not obvious that she worked pretty hard at making herself always look cheerful. But the other one, this first-year kid, looked like a child. He was a baby-faced pretty boy, yet kinda ordinary. But hey, some girls are into that. Then what is it? He asked the older girl vacantly. You know, she said, turning red and staring at her feet. Her expression clearly showed that it wasn't anything but what it was. Huh? I knew how the kid felt, though. He couldn't figure out why. Why was this pretty senior asking a kid like him out? It was natural to be dubious instead of happy. Course now I'm in college. I know loads of girls who have boyfriends younger than them, but that just doesn't happen in high school. Up to high school, you're in a sort of unmistakable feudal system. A girl could date a college guy or a junior high kid or anyone she wanted to outside of school, but there was an unwritten rule that a girl could only date boys her year or older on the inside. Kamikishiro-san? He asked, very troubled. This is where I learned her name. What? She replied, looking at him with a mixture of anxiety and expectation. Men find this kind of look hard to say no to. But he was looking away and didn't see it. I'm sorry, I just can't do this, he sort of shrieked as he turned and ran away. Kamikishiro almost chased after him, but stopped herself. Her shoulders slumped. From behind, I could see her head hanging down, a little sideways. Somehow, this angle made her all the more beautiful. Like some sort of female Don Quixote, fighting the invisible school rules. Gotta say, it impressed the shit out of me. While I was off feeling all impressed, she suddenly rolled her head around like an old man getting out of the bath. Not again, she said exhaustedly, and then spun around and looked right at me. I didn't have time to hide. Our eyes met. Enjoy the show? She laughed and strolled over to me. She'd known I was there the whole time. No, I didn't mean to watch, I said, scrambling. She reached out her hand and said, my fee, as she pulled a castor mild out of my pocket. Damn, I've been dying for a hit of nicotine all day. She stuck the cigarette between her lips and looked at me expectantly. I hurriedly lit it. Pretty smooth, she said with a smirk. She let out a big puff of smoke. Her manner was the polar opposite from a moment before. But looking at her profile, I could make out the tear tracks. You were serious, I said, expecting her to deny it and move on. But instead, she just nodded and said, You bet I was. She slumped into a crouch and continued, Serious as I've ever been. She hugged her knees to her chest and buried her face in her skirt. Why can't we pick who we fall in love with? It'd be so much easier, she said forlornly. Well, yeah, true, but frankly, I think you're better off getting rejected by a guy like that, I said in a very honest tone. She looked up. Her tears had made her eyeliner run a bit. Unexpectedly, she said, Don't. What? Don't be nice to me. I don't want to fall for you, too. What? I yelped, completely off balance now. She stood up, no longer crying, and smiled. Just kidding. But you're a good guy. So, what's your name? Kimura, 2B. I'm Kamikishiro, 3F. You planning on going to class this afternoon? Not really. I had modern Japanese and political science left, but I was planning on skipping them. Then I'll buy you a Moseburger. Pay you back for cheering me up. Come on, I know a way out the back, she winked naughtily. I'll buy you a Moseburger! And that's basically how we got started. That's pretty much what we were like the whole time. We were never really in love, as such. We might have looked like we were from the outside or something, but she never really fell for me. At least, I don't think she did. That was 2 years ago. Eventually, Kamikishiro did convince that first-year kid. His name was Tanaka Shiro, the most, John Smith name. Shut up, Mallory. Moseburger implies the existence of a Lise burger. To go out with her. When she attacked, no one could stop her. One time, I just had to tell her, I just don't know what you see in him. She often called me up and asked me to hang out with her. Yeah, you could call it a date. We'd watch movies, eat out, shoot pool, and bet money on the game. We'd also do other stuff too, but you know how it is. Well, you see, he's an archer. An archer? On the archery team? If I remembered it correctly, we were on one of those slow-moving Ferris wheels at an amusement park. It was like a picture postcard of those cheesy high school dates that you see in manga. Yeah. First time I saw him, he was still in junior high and was in some contest. You ever seen one? They all line up and shoot. The first one to miss loses. It was pretty damn cool. He did pretty well, but eventually lost. But his eyes, when they stared at that tiny little target so far away, there was this glitter in them. It gave me goosebumps. And then he'd let the arrow fly, and swoosh! Sounds kind of shallow, I said, somewhat disgusted. All that had nothing whatsoever to do with Tanaka himself, or with his personality. Of course he'd be reluctant. I'd much rather play around with someone like you, Kimu-kun. You're more fun, and I got no plans to take up archery myself. But I can't shake the feeling this kid's meant for bigger things. And I'm not, you mean? Ouch, I grimaced. The words "someone like you" made things crystal clear. You didn't miss the stream? No, you didn't. You came in a little late, but I think you've already read Boogiepop, right? So it's okay. How you doing, Noxer? Nothing I could do when she put it that way. Yep, you're like me that way. I'm a mess. And frankly, so are you, Kimu-kun. Can't deny that, I said, chuckling. It was true. If it wasn't, then why would I be dating a girl who I knew full well had another guy on the side? Still, I was falling for her pretty hard by this point, yet I never even considered trying to get her to break things off with Tanaka. It wasn't just a mess, it was a freaking train wreck just waiting to happen. And on top of that, she was hardly the only girl I was seeing. Yeah, we were exactly the same. I'll be honest, Shiro-kun doesn't get me at all, she said, sighing bitterly. He tries not to hurt me, but he always talks kind of standoffish, and that just hurts me more. He just doesn't get that at all. Huh. Can't say I do either. I'm just getting in his way. I don't think he really needs to be in love yet. Sometimes I found her nearly impossible to understand. It's easy to do the typical guy thing and just bitch that girls are all complicated and stuff, but her level of complexity was clearly at a notch or two above the other girls her age. I'm pretty sure most of them wouldn't have even been able to follow her either. As it was, the only friends I knew she had were me and some girl in her class named Kirima Nagi. That girl was even weirder than Kamikishiro, so I guess that's why they got along. Truthfully, Kirima was better looking than Kamikishiro, but I always did like Kamikishiro better, even now. But do the two of us need it? I guess so. Feels like I'm kinda incomplete on my own, you know? That's it exactly. See, we're the same, she said, gave me a tiny smile, leaned forward and put her lips on mine. It was no big deal. It was not exactly the first time we'd kissed. You do that with Tanaka? I asked curtly. Hell no, she grinned, denying it instantly. She was always at her most attractive when she wasn't outright trying to be sexy or to act cute. I never figured out why. I was pretty sure the letter was a prank, but something about it just kept bugging me. I decided to skip class and head over to the town where I'd gone to high school. Call it a hunch, but whoever had sent the letter probably lived there. My family still lives there, but I didn't swing by. I just headed straight for Shinyo Academy. I didn't think any of the current students were behind it, but my legs took me in that direction anyway. Ah, Akio, over here! Someone called as I waited for the bus to arrive. I turned around and found a girl who'd been in my same class during my first and third years, Miyashita Toka. The first thing that I noticed was the huge Spalding bag over her shoulder. Hey, what's up? I replied. What are you doing back here? It's not even New Year's yet. Miyashita's a cute girl, but I'd never made a pass at her, which is probably why we're still friends. Yeah, no reason in particular. You? You didn't hear? Oh, that's him. Jesus. You didn't hear? I failed exams. I'm a Ronin, on my way to cram school as we speak. Right. Yep, I guess you forgot all about us when you moved up, huh? You sound bitter. Fighting with that designer boyfriend of yours? I asked, knowing that she'd been dating an older boy in that line of work since her second year. Do not even talk to me about him. He never even calls, she said, pouting. He's probably trying not to disrupt your studies. Nah, he studies more than me. He's trying to get some sort of award. It makes me sick. What about you? Got a college girl yet? I made a face. Nope. Aw, that third-year girl still dragging you back? She was a third year then. She'd be 20 now. You're You're counting her birthdays? She dumped you and vanished. Give up on her already. It's none of your business, I spat. She looked pissed, but she grabbed my hand. What? Come with me. We are having tea. All right. Still pissed, she dragged me into a nearby cafe with the name of Tristan. What about cram school? Screw it. I'm gonna fail again this year anyway, she said recklessly. She plunked herself down in a booth and shouted at the counter, 2 American coffees. She then turned on me to tell me exactly what I already knew. You're an idiot. I know, I replied petulantly. No, you don't. You think you're some sort of hero, don't you? What with that mess 2 years ago, Miyashita announced. She'd always been like this, sort of self-righteous and inclined to stick her nose into everything. I do not. It was you, wasn't it? Her lover? You didn't even know who it was you were taking the fall for, did you? 2 years ago, after Kamikishiro had vanished, they found a blanket, pillow, and electric heater in a storage room near the gym, where no one ever went. It was obvious someone had snuck into the school and had been living there. At first, they thought it was a drifter, but then they found an accessory that belonged to Kamikishiro, according to one of the girls in her class, and it turned into a student body scandal. I don't know what kind of people Kamikishiro's parents were, but their daughter had disappeared and the school suspected her involvement in illicit activities, yet the parents made no protest at all to the accusations. In her continued absence, the school made preparations to forcibly expel her, at which point a certain male student announced that he'd been her lover, and all hell broke loose after that. She didn't bring any outsiders into the school. Don't expel her, he'd said. The teachers didn't even pretend to believe him, but the students made a huge fuss about it, and just to calm things down, the school suspended the boy and relented on Kamikishiro's punishment. But Kamikishiro never did show up again. Her name was even kicked off the rosters at graduation due to a lack of credits. It all amounted to nothing in the end. There was never really anything to the story. As a result of the commotion, the boy got his comeuppance, though. He received a series of Dear John letters from all his many girlfriends, telling him that he was a loser and that they were dumping his sorry ass. No, I knew who Kamikishiro was seeing, I told Miyashita with a faint smile. Liar. No, really. Then who? Who'd she drop you for? An alien. He took her with him back into space. No sooner were the words out of my mouth than a slap echoed through the cafe. Miyashita had belted me one across the face. Get a grip on yourself. Be a man and just move on, she said, furious. It wasn't like she had any special feelings for me, mind you. She was just that kind of girl. Sorry, I said, rubbing my cheek sheepishly. But I hadn't been joking. That was exactly what Kamikishiro had said to me. Oh, big stretch. Kimu-kun, do you think human existence is justified? Kamikishiro asked out of the blue one day. Nope, I said it instantly. I was getting used to her non sequiturs. Dang, neither do I, she said. We were lying next to each other on the bank of the river that ran along the road leading up to school. Since most of the students took the bus, people hardly ever walked along this road. It was already dark out, and we could see stars above us. Humans just aren't that great. However much our civilization advances, we can't seem to do anything to make ourselves happier, I said, obviously trying to impress her with something profound. Yeah, maybe, she replied. She seemed kind of serious. Why do you ask? I just met this guy, but... You in love again? What about Tanaka? I asked, surprised. Yeah, I am. But let's put that aside for a moment, she said, sitting up. She gazed at the wavering reflection of our city lights on the moving water of the river. He's from outer space. She looked serious. She had to be joking, but she didn't seem to be waiting for me to laugh, so I took it as some sort of metaphor and just nodded. Mm-hmm. But I don't think he's from some other planet. It's like, in space there's this big consciousness, and it sent him here to, test mankind or something. Kind of like the inspection robots that always show up in Hoshi Shinichi's short stories. But he's not a machine or anything. It's just that his body isn't something that exists on Earth. It can, turn into anything. So when he landed on Earth, he disguised himself as a human and tried to examine the world. But there were a few mistakes, and he didn't quite manage to pull off being human quite right. He's evolved a little too much. He's got more power within him than any human will ever have in 1,000 years. No, in 10,000 years. Apparently, space is just so big that they just couldn't match him up with Earth time right. They couldn't match him up with Earth time just right, so his true nature came out ahead of time, and the government or some kind of big corporation got a hold of him. But the idiots thought that he was just some mutant, and they did all sorts of experiments on him and cloned him. But unlike him, that cloned copy turned into a brutal man-eater. I no longer had the foggiest idea what she was talking about. I elected to keep quiet until I could pick up the thread again. He wanted to communicate all this, but he couldn't. He was programmed in such a way that he couldn't talk to humans directly. It was so that he wouldn't reveal his true identity to anyone. Which was fine. I mean, after all, he was sent here to test humans and see if they'd be nice to him. He wasn't here to negotiate or make speeches or anything. He was just here to observe, so they named him Echoes, since all he can do is reflect back the words that people speak to him. But the man-eater killed everyone in the research facility and escaped. Now it's off hiding inside of some human society somewhere. But Echoes came after it, and he met me. What's he gonna do if he catches it? Fight it, I guess. If he doesn't, it'll just take over the world or something. But he's an alien. Why does he care what happens here? Yeah, you've got a point, but basically he's just nice. That's it? Isn't it enough? Isn't niceness the best motivation that someone can have? She asked, looking at me kinda solemn. She then let out a sigh. Half of this is just me reading between the lines. I think he's got some sort of other complicated reason, too. You know, something about maintaining the balance of the planet. But if that was all, it's kind of sad, don't you think? She whispered, pretty downcast. She looked on the verge of tears, which made me uncomfortable. I felt the kind of tightness in my chest that I thought I'd left behind in junior high. I cleared my throat to hide this feeling and said deliberately rough, So, how the hell did this Echoes guy even explain all of this to you? I thought he couldn't talk. It was a stupid nitpick. So she said, You're too smart. I can't fool you, and cackled. That's all? I asked. The story was a bit too detailed to be dismissed like this. Yep, I was just kidding. Just a stupid little fairy tale, Kamikishiro said with an impish grin stealing over the corners of her mouth. We sat in silence for a while. She was the first to break it. But if Echoes wins, he'll probably go back to his home in the stars. Sounds romantic to me, kind of like the Tanabata festival. I wonder what he'll tell them about us humans. I don't suppose there's much of a chance of him saying, Don't worry, they're a good species, is there? Where's he now? Hiding at the school. Don't tell anyone. I laughed. Don't worry, I won't. Stupid promise. Because of that promise, I got myself suspended and had to lower my ambitions for college. But since I turned all my friends into enemies and spent the rest of school isolated, I had nothing else to do but study, and eventually I used my grades to make up for the poor conduct report. The stars are so far away, Kamikishiro said, gazing up at the night sky. They're farther away than our lives. What? They're farther away than our lives, I said. I'm not sure what her story really meant, but she'd managed to get the answer that she'd wanted out of me, as I told her. But if you open your heart to Echoes, then I'm sure he'll learn to like humanity. You think so? I want to think so, because the story you told me leaves us no salvation. Yeah, I hope you're right, she said, turning towards me and smiling. But at the time, I didn't want her to smile. I wanted her to get angry with me for saying something so stupid. I tried to think of something even stupider to say, but instead we headed back home. I walked off down the road to the station, and then she went back towards the school, saying that she'd take the bus. That was the last time I ever saw her. She didn't come to school the next day, or the day after that. She never came again. 2 cups of American coffee appeared in front of Miyashita Toka and me. Miyashita picked up on the waitress's look of keen interest and cooled down a little. Sorry, I shouldn't have slapped you. Still, she said in a hushed tone. Don't worry, I know, I'm an idiot. I really do think that you need to let her go. She's... What was her name? Kamikishiro Naoko. Oh, right. I didn't know her very well, but I think if she really did like you, Akio, that she'd want you to move on now. That's why she didn't say anything when she left. Make sense? That'd be nice. Truth is, I'm pretty sure she never even thought twice about me. Eventually, Miyashita Toka let me go, forcibly exhorting me to cheer up. We parted at the door to the coffee shop. Take care. You know, you really ought to do something about that hero complex of yours. Gonna get you into trouble someday. You've got tests to study for. I guess, she said with her head to one side. But still. Suit yourself, I said, turning to leave. It was then that she called after me. Kimura-kun! I looked back and nearly tripped over my own feet. It was certainly Miyashita Toka standing there, but for some reason I felt like I was looking at a completely different person, a boy. It was as if she'd transformed or something. What? Kamikishiro Naoko performed her duty admirably. You should perform your own duty and make her proud. That's the only thing you can do for her, she proclaimed like she was giving some speech on stage. Then she spun around on her heel and was lost in the crowd. I stared after her, watching the throng flow onwards. When my bus reached the stop in front of Shinyo Academy, it was already past sunset, and there were no students in sight. Apparently, even the sports teams gave up on practice and called it a day once it got dark. This must be why none of our teams have ever even so much as qualified for the national tournaments. It hadn't changed a bit since I was last there. The gates were closed. Outsiders had to identify themselves over an intercom to get in, so I passed right by them. I entered the school through a gap in the fences that Kamikishiro had shown me. The darkened school grounds were silent, like an abandoned building. The towering school building kind of looked like a giant looming tombstone. Until about a year before, I had actually come here every day, but now I was a stranger. There's not much good I have to say about my years in high school, but I felt a pain in my chest when I thought about how little connection I had now to my past. I remember Kamikishiro and the abuse that I took after the incident like it was yesterday, but the rest of it was all far too long ago. Why had I come here? If I was looking for the source of the letter, this place wasn't going to be of any use. But this high school was the only remaining connection that I had with Kamikishiro. Someone else had moved into her apartment. There were no traces of her left. Excuse me. There was nowhere else for me to go. She just wasn't here. Yeah, somewhere inside I'd wondered if Kamikishiro herself had sent the letter, but that was probably wrong. Even here in school, she wasn't around. The letter was nothing but a prank. Oh, thank you for the sippy, Kage. I will, gladly. Oh, a stretch too? I'm being spoiled tonight. Can you tell the mouth rigging is a lot a lot better now? Also late on it, but the 1 hour mark passed? What do you mean? Let's see. Stretch every hour. Oh, I see. Thank you. I hope all of you are stretching as well. Everything was over. It was all in the past. I looked up at the sky. It was cloudy, and I couldn't see the stars, and yet I felt like I could see them like I had when I used to lay with her on the riverbank. She had told me all of her secrets, metaphorically. Told me, not Tanakashiro, not anyone else, and I never understood what she meant by it. Wasn't that enough? That's all the reason I needed to love her for the rest of my life. No matter how much I might fall in love with some other girl, she'll always live inside of me in the way that she was back then. Impossible to understand and more than a little crazy. Life is brief, young maiden, fall in love. I whispered a snatch of the gondola song that she always used to sing while I wandered around the school. I found myself in front of the gym. Suddenly I wanted to see the storage room where the interloper had hidden himself. Their exact relationship remained a mystery, but it was the last known trace of her. I grabbed a flashlight from the emergency supplies and shone it around the gym. I'd forgotten half the features of the place. I guess I really had wanted to wipe all recall of high school from my mind. I found some kind of door or cover or something down by the floor, near the main entrance. Figured that must be it, so I hunkered down and opened it. It was just an empty space. Iron pillars, concrete floor, bare ceiling. The foundations of the gym, I guess. Designed to absorb the impact of an earthquake. I'd been there 3 years and never even known it was there. Guess this isn't it. I turned to leave, but something moved near my foot. There was a dry rustle. I shone the light at my feet. There was something black and dried. I thought it was a glove at first, maybe forgotten by a workman, but it was too thin for that. It wasn't meant to be put on over a hand. It was a hand. I stared at it in shock for a moment, then screamed. It was a mummified human hand. What the hell is this? My knees gave out, and I fell on my ass. You're doing deadlift? Shut up. I'm incredibly strong. So strong. Let me see. When Kamikishiro had vanished, she hadn't been the only one. A number of other students had vanished both before and after her. I'd never connected them before, but I could think of no other reason why a hand would be lying on the floor of the school. Maybe it was because I'd kicked it, or maybe it was just the exposure to the outside air. But whichever the case, the hand crumbled away to dust before my very eyes. And within seconds, there was nothing left of it at all. What does it mean? What the hell happened here 2 years ago? But there was nothing to give me those answers. There's nothing for me to do but sit there in the dark, shuddering in fear. Oh. Chapter 5, Heartbreaker. Ni Toki Kei. Actually, let me check something. How many? No, don't disappear. Okay, I'm trying to find. Oh, this is the last chapter of this volume. The story continues in volume 2. I think it's 1 and 2 that are complete story, if I recall correctly. So maybe I'll read 2 as well if you guys ended up liking this one. But I'm gonna take a stretch real fast. All of you should too. The one I always do is interlacing your fingers and reaching them super high above your head and then leaning side to side and front and back. We'll do some head circles together. It's hard to do when I'm stretching. There's a cat I must not disturb. Oh no, I understand. That's very fair. Don't forget neck stretches and rotations. Yeah, that's what we're doing. No, you refuse, Lop. You're gonna be... all your joints are gonna fuse together. That's what happens if you don't stretch. You simply lock up. Like lockjaw for the whole body. Chapter 5, Heartbreaker. Ni Toki Kei. Oh, please let me click. Okay. Lock and jaw torture. Shut up, Mel! Lock and jaw torture. You're so stupid. The thing is flexible. I want to be the opposite. So... Okay, there's a first-year boy asking for you, my classmate Mishima said. I looked up from my book and asked, who? Dunno, but he's cute. The discipline committee... Oh my fucking god. This word is my kryptonite. The discipline committee president eating all the young boys, she cackled. The thing is...
Hitsure komimashita.
I'm sorry, did you hear the first time I did it? I was mid-head roll, so it sounded kind of funny.
Hitsure komimashita.
Oh, hello, Thunder. Stop bananing and I see. Yeah, we're just starting the last chapter of this volume. I did, but then I flubbed.
Komimamita.
Yeah. The discipline committee president eating all the young boys, she cackled. I gave her a pained smile, stood up, and went into the hall. When he saw me, he bowed his head politely. Nitoki-senpai? I'm Tanaka-shiro, 1D. You were at the gate this morning, weren't you? Oh, fuck. Tanaka-kun, you wanted to see me? You were on the gate this morning, weren't you? One of the duties of the discipline committee members, which we all took turns doing, was to stand at the gate. I'm gonna drink some tea. One of the duties of the discipline committee members, which we all took turns doing, was to stand at the gate and monitor the students coming in and out. Yeah? What about it? Did you see 3F's Kamikishiro-san arrive? Naoko-san? I know her, but no, she didn't come today. But she's nearly always late. She's not in class either, he said gravely. Takako Flubamura, shut up.
Really? Must be skipping.
No, he said, quite sure of himself. Recently, she had some sort of reason why she had to come to school every day. Is this kid in love with her? Seemed like it. Maybe he was going to ask her out today.
Huh. I don't know. If she's not here, ask her tomorrow.
That might be too late. Oh, excuse me, he exclaimed anxiously. You really don't know anything?
You call her house?
There's never anyone there.
Eh?
Her parents are in the middle of an ugly divorce. Her mother's gone to her parents' house, and her father never comes home. How's the volume, by the way? Is that good?
Really?
Everyone in the apartment building's talking about it. Everybody I asked told me all about it.
Huh,
I said. Suddenly, a voice cut in from the side. You should ask Kirima Nagi. Both of us swung around in surprise. My kohai on the discipline committee, Saotome-kun, was standing there.
Masami? What do you...
Oh, Masami? What do you... Tanaka-kun said, wide-eyed. Later, I found out these two were in the same class. I was just passing by, happened over here. Thought you might like to know.
Know what?
I don't have any details, but Kamikishiro Naoko-senpai and Kirima Nagi have been friends since junior high. She's just off of suspension, so she might know something about Kamikishiro-senpai. I blinked. It was the first I'd heard of Naoko-san being friends with the legendary Kirima Nagi from the class next door. And here I thought I knew about most people in the school.
How do you know that?
I asked Saotome. Oh, I asked Kirima Nagi out once. Picked up a few things back then.
You asked her out?
It took guts to even talk to the fire witch. I'll give him that. She said no, he admitted. What class is this Kirima person in? Tanaka-kun asked forcibly. Somehow he'd never heard of her. Second year, class D, right next door. Okay. Whoa, hold on there. No telling what'll happen if you just burst in on her. I said as if she were some sort of lion. But it was true. She'd punched out one boy's front teeth before. I couldn't let them go alone, so I followed them to Class D. I asked a girl I knew near the door. Soema-san, is Kirima-san here? I've got a first-year boy who wants to talk to her. She's not here today.
Really? She came in the gate.
I knew my words to be true. I was on the gate. I'd seen her arrive. Boogiepop X SAO crossover Boogie Glop. I'm gonna time you out. So, she is here? I haven't seen her come to class, though, Soema-san said, shrugging. We looked at each other. What's going on? Saotome-kun asked. Sounds like she is involved, Tanaka-kun said in a shrill voice. I was seriously worried myself now. Naoko-san and Kirima Nagi? What were they up to? As we stood there in front of the door, someone asked, Could I get in here? We turned around to find Yurihara Minako, the best student in the school, standing right before us. Oh, sorry, Saotome-kun said, moving aside. She nodded and strode regally into the room like some sort of queen. The bell rang, so we all split up and headed back to our respective rooms. Naoko's vanished. I can't find her anywhere, Kirima Nagi said, in a place steeped in shadows. The man with her said nothing. His expression never wavered. Nagi grew irritated at his lack of reaction and shook her head violently. I called her Cell, but she didn't answer. You don't know anything? She pressed on. The man was unable to talk, so he simply shook his head slowly. She may have gotten caught in its net. That thing Naoko said was your sibling. The man did not respond. Kirima Nagi scowled at him. Finally, she spat. We should have never listened to you. We should have just called the cops or the self-defense force. If the world knew about it, it would have just washed its hands of the whole business and vanished to some space where we couldn't follow, or some place where we couldn't follow. But if Naoko's dead, then we're already too late. She buried her hands in her face, her nail digging into her cheeks and forehead. The man didn't move. Say something. You talked to Naoko, didn't you? Try and let me know what you're thinking. Kirima Nagi shouted, grabbing his collar. It was a Brooks Brothers cotton shirt that Kamikishiro Naoko had bought for him. Even when she shook him roughly, he did nothing but stare back at her in silence. God damn it. I will find you, Manticore, she howled, uncharacteristically angry. And you're gonna help, Echoes. He nodded, but yes, there was something remote about that motion, as if you're monitoring Nagi's reactions. It bugged the hell out of me, so I took gate duty again that day after school. In the morning, we had to check the cards as they went through, but on the way home, the job was simply boring. You... I don't know how to phrase that. You are nosy, laughed the first-year kid who should have been on duty. He gave up his place happily. Nosy? I guess I was. There's a part of me that can't stand to see something unclear, something uncertain. That part of me wants to fix those things. Once, when I was at a friend's house, they left me alone in the room with a half-done jigsaw puzzle, and when they came back, I'd already finished it. They'd been pretty angry. That was the reason I was on the unpopular discipline committee, and the president of it, no less. It was simply because of this clarity impulse of mine. Anyone? Who wants to do it? They'd all ask. But nobody ever raised their hand. They just sat there in silence. Then, before I knew it, my hand was up. It's like a disease, I know. With Naoko-san missing, if I hadn't been asked, I'd never have gotten involved. But now that I had been, I wouldn't be able to sleep until I'd cleared things up. Do I have to read Boogiepop before playing The Nightmare Before Christmas, Oogie's Revenge for the Sony PlayStation 2? Shut up, Hikage! Jesus Christ! We do not need a Mallard judgment. We don't. My friends tell me, you're like a big sister. There's just something reliable about you, which I took as a compliment, though they may have been making fun of me. But the truth is, it's just my neurosis. Talking to the fire witch is scary, but if I don't, I can't settle down. But even when most of the students had gone home and the sky was starting to darken, Kirima Nagi had yet to appear. Does Mallory need to listen to Judgment Shinpon before making a judgment? No! No! He doesn't! It was well past the time when the gate guard was free to go home, and I was starting to wonder what else I could do when Tanaka-kun and Saotome-kun came up. Ah, senpai, did Kirima Nagi go home? Saotome-kun asked. No, not yet. Oh, said Tanaka-kun, hanging his head. Why don't we look for her together? I'm sure she's still in the school somewhere, I suggested. That's what we were going to do, Tanaka-kun nodded. We were talking about it in the classroom. I'm a little worried about Kirima Nagi, Saotome-kun said. She may have rejected him, but it seemed that he still liked her. But where do you think he is? Or where do you think she is? Somewhere where nobody would notice her? On the roof? Or maybe under the gym? Oh, or the pool changing rooms, Saotome-kun suggested. Oh my god, please don't do that. Why would she be in a place like that? Tanaka-kun said in an irritated voice. I don't know, but everyone knows her, so she must be someplace like that. Or somebody would have noticed. Let's check them out, I said, and we headed back into the eerily quiet school. While on our way to the roof, I couldn't help but ask, Tanaka-kun, were you and Naoko-san? He said, worried. Kankishiro-senpai asked him out, Saotome-kun interjected. What? I yelped. Masumi, that was a secret. Don't worry, senpai won't tell. I was still reeling as they spoke. You're joking, right? I certainly thought so I kept asking her if it was a joke, but she kept saying she was serious. Huh. I stared at his face closely. Please don't tell anyone. Okay, I won't, but still. It was pretty confusing, but I couldn't think of a reason to say no, so I ended up going out with her. But I could swear that Naoko-san had a different boyfriend. Yeah, she does. Second-year guy named Kimura Akio. Never really worked up the nerve to ask about that. Kimura? He picked up Naoko-san too? But it can't be too serious with a guy like that. Kimura-kun was from the class next to mine, and he was an infamous playboy. Legend had it that he'd made a pass at every second-year girl in the entire school. He'd even flirted with me, the discipline committee president. Maybe, maybe not. Either way, I was never able to figure out what she really wanted. Do you like Naoko-san? Do I? Be clear. My fixation popped right up and out of my mouth. If we're going to the roof, the fire escape round back is better, Saotome-kun said, glancing around us. Why? The door's locked, isn't it? Oh, right. As we went round the back, we saw somebody coming down the fire escape. Ah! We chased after them, but they were gone before we could get there. But they were tall and probably male, so we didn't chase them any further. Whoever it was had headed towards the gates and was probably going home. If he was up there, then Kirima Nagi probably isn't. Yeah, let's check the gym. We went to the storage rooms under the gym. They were locked, but luckily for us, I was on gate duty, so I had a master key that would open any door in school. Ugh. Saotome-kun pushed the heavy door open and went inside. It was closed. I doubt she's in here, I said, peeking in. It was dark, so we turned on the lights. There was just one small fluorescent light, though, and it didn't penetrate past the piles of mats, springboards, and other gym equipment. "I'll have a good night, Thunderbird." Have a good work. Good work. But she might be hiding somewhere, Tanaka-kun said, moving to follow Saotome-kun inside. But Saotome-kun came walking back towards us, waving his hand. Nobody here, and definitely no signs of anyone having been here. Nothing here. And Saotome Masumi, said Saotome Masumi. Behind him were the blanket and heater that Echoes had used, and several scattered food wrappers. They were hidden in shadow, and from where they stood at the entrance, Tanaka Shiro and Nitoki Kei weren't able to see them. "Any cigarette butts?" Kei asked. Masumi made a show of looking behind him, then shook his head. At his feet was a little bell that Kamiki Shiro had kept on her school bag. "You used your flubs? Shut up." "Let's try somewhere else." "Right. Saotome-kun, come on out of there. I'll lock up." Masumi said, leaving the evidence where it was, turning out the lights as he left. "Where should we look next?" Kei asked.
"Hitsure, kamimashita."
Damn it. Where should we look next? Kei asked, locking the door and turning towards the two boys. It just occurred to me that maybe we should use the PA system to summon Kirima Nagi, Masumi suggested. He had confirmed the presence of Echoes, and he knew that Echoes was presumably moving with Kirima Nagi. It was time to move the plan forward to stage 2. "The PA system?" I said, blinking at Saotome-kun. "Yeah, that key can get us in the broadcast room, right?" "Well, yes, it can, but won't we get in trouble?" "Probably," Saotome-kun admitted, "but there's no other students around, and the only teacher here is the one on night watch. I'd be more surprised if anyone cares enough to yell at us." Well, it would be faster." "Okay, I'll handle the teacher." "Thank you for this," Tanaka-kun said apologetically. "Not like I'm doing it for you," I said. "I'm worried about Naoko-san, too." Why was I being so snotty? I was irritating myself. I was only doing this because I couldn't settle down without making things clear. Only my words were impressive. But I was worried about Naoko. If Kirima Nagi had gotten her mixed up in something, and if it had gone bad, I had to try and stop it. I'm sounding very much like the ardent discipline committee president, aren't I? I never meant to turn into something like that. "Come on," I said, agitated, and set off, the two boys following me. Unfortunately, being at the head of the party didn't do anything for my image. It made me look even more stuck up. Dang. Dang. "Will Kirima Nagi, second year, Class D, please report to the broadcast office? If you're still in the building, we would like to talk to you regarding Kamikishiro Naoko-san. Repeat, will Kirima Nagi-san, second year, Class D?" Tanakashiro's voice echoed throughout the darkened school. Of course, it reached the ear of Nakayama Haruo, the one teacher still in the school on night watch duty, but all he said was, "Oof." He then slumped onto the table, knocking over his instant ramen, and started snoring. He was the guardian of the master key that the discipline committee member had, and he was supposed to take it from them and record this in the log, but he was conked out before he could perform his duty. But this was not because of any laziness on his part. His hands dangled towards the floor, much too limply for normal sleep. His face was pressed against the desk, his neck bent as far as it would go, and he was virtually guaranteed a stiff neck in the morning. His snores were not considered attractive at the best of times, but now they sounded like a stray dog starving to death. He was not asleep. He had clearly been knocked unconscious. Nor was he alone in the room. There was a girl standing next to him. She glared up at the speakers as the voice flowed out of them. There was a sweet, strange smell in the room. The smell had been enough to knock Nakayama Haruo out. But the beautiful girl with long black hair did not even raise an eyebrow. Of course not. She was the source of the smell. Less than 10 seconds after the PA announcement began, she was out the door of the night watch room and heading up the stairs. For many years afterwards, Nakayama Haruo was to suffer a mysterious phenomenon similar to LSD flashbacks, though he was quite certain he had never tried any drugs, in which his daily routine was abruptly disrupted by illusions similar to intense migraines. Certainly, this mysterious disease was a curse, but he had no idea how insanely lucky he really was. The only reason he'd survived was by the whim of a killer, the fleeting thought that perhaps she'd killed too many people already. Kirima Nagi had heard the announcement as well, and looked up. She was busy prying open the lockers of every student in the school and searching the contents. Naturally, she was looking for traces of the manticore. Echo stood beside her, disguised in a school uniform. Lop. How do they know I'm still at the school? And what's this about Naoko? Broadcast office. Echoes plucked the words out of the broadcast and spoke them. Can you sense something, Echoes? Kirima Nagi asked. Kamikishiro Naoko had explained to her that he could sense the presence of his clone, the manticore. Echoes put his finger on his forehead and tried to sense it, but shook his head, apparently drawing a blank. But an obvious summons like that, why the hell would it need to hide? Nagi said angrily. Echoes simply shook his head. He knew that only the manticore had learned far more. He knew only that the manticore had learned far more about human society than he had managed. This was a trap. He put his hand on Nagi's shoulder and pushed her backwards, signaling her not to follow. Why not? It's a trap? Nagi said. She knew it too. Echoes nodded. That's why we have to go, Nagi said quietly. We don't play into this trap and it'll change its face and make a run for it. It'll leave the school. We'll never catch it then. Echoes watched the fearless girl carefully. In his heart, he whispered, Which is it? But the girl who could hear that voice was no more. Nagi pulled a pair of leather gloves out of her skirt, put them on, and took a stun gun off the belt that she wore around her waist. The belt and gloves failed to match her uniform at all. She squeezed the grip once, testing it. With a crackle, a 2,000,000-volt firework flew through the air. She's not coming, Tanaka-kun whispered. It had been at least 5 minutes since our broadcast. The teacher isn't here either. What's going on? I asked. I was pretty sure Nakayama-sensei was on duty tonight. He was a little neurotic, but he definitely was not the type to let small things go, and an unscheduled broadcast was sure to set him off. Was he asleep? Saotome-kun stood deep in thought, frowning. What now? Tanaka-kun asked, turning to look at us, unable to wait. One more time, Saotome-kun whispered. There's no way she didn't hear that. Maybe she has gone home. I spread my hands. Yeah, grunted Tanaka-kun. Saotome said again, more forcefully, Come on, let's do it again. But when he reached for the switch, all the lights in the room suddenly went out.
What?
There were no windows in the broadcast office. It was pitch black. A blackout? I said, recovering slightly. Damn, the breakers, snapped Saotome-kun angrily. I wasn't sure what he meant for a second, but, of course, if the circuit breakers went, so would the lights. It made perfect sense. He was clearly a fast thinker. But why would the breakers trip? Unless it was done deliberately, they only tripped when someone was using too much electricity. Fumbling around in the darkness, I managed to get the door open at last, and moonlight streamed in through the windows in the hall. There was a black shadow standing right in front of me. I didn't even have time to look. The shadow pushed something towards me, and a shockwave hit my body. A sound somewhere between a breath and a scream came out of my mouth, and I crumpled to the floor. I couldn't move. President? Saotome-kun cried from behind me. It sounded so far away. The shadow slipped swiftly past me and launched itself at Saotome-kun. The impact of him hitting the ground carried through the floorboards to me. Who are you? Tanaka-kun shrieked. That was the last thing I heard. My consciousness slipped farther and farther away. When I opened my eyes, I found myself tied up and lying on my side on a heavily waxed floor. It was dark all around me, but moonlight came in from somewhere, so it was brighter than the main building had been. Wherever we were was pretty open. There was only one room in the school this large, with big windows along one side and wooden floors. It was the lecture hall. What the... I tried to sit up, but my body was heavy, leaden. It was clear that I still hadn't fully recovered from the impact. Saotome-kun and Tanaka-kun were lying next to me. I prodded their backs with my knees.
Hey!
Groaned Saotome-kun, stirring and opening his eyes. This... he started to say, but quickly snapped his mouth shut. What? I asked, looking around. I found what had surprised him. 2 figures stood in the direction that he was looking. Everyone awake? Said one of them. It was Kirima Nagi. The other one appeared to be a male student. He was wearing a uniform, but I didn't recognize him. What did you do with Kamikishiro-san? Tanaka-kun asked. It looked like he'd woken up first. You're Tanaka-shiro, then? Naoko told me about you. Nagi sighed. Kirima-san, what? Saotome-kun asked. Nagi glared at him coldly. I told you not to get involved, Saotome-kun. But what's going on? You don't need to know. How can you say that? I shouted. Nagi glared at me, surprised. Committee President, I know why these 2 are here, but how did you get mixed up in this? I know Naoko-san too. But don't you think you're trying a little too hard? Caused me no end of confusion. I'm the one who's confused, I shouted, completely forgetting that I was talking to a violence-prone problem child. Tell me what you think you're doing right this instant. She ignored me and looked at the boy next to her. It's none of them, right, Echoes? What does she mean? The boy she'd called Echoes nodded. What a strange nickname. None of them. You'd know, right? Even if it were lying low? No. None of them have been altered, then. I see. Watching the 2 of them nod at each other pissed me off. Stop whispering cryptically at each other. And you aren't even a student here. I've never seen you before in my life. I'm not bragging, but if you're on gate duty often enough, you do end up knowing everyone at school. Nagi looked at me. I apologize. We no longer suspect you. Time for you to go on home. This was much too selfish. When hell freezes over, I snapped. Somehow I managed to get to my feet, despite the ropes binding me. I doubt I could do that twice. It's a stunt you can only pull off when you're too angry to notice. Nagi frowned. I told you to explain yourself. How am I supposed to just forget a thing like this? Well. I guess we see how you became committee president, Nagi said, glaring at me. She looked like a yakuza. But you need to keep quiet about this. Why should I? I glared back at her. For your own good, she said coldly. Rah! I snarled, contorting my body in anger. Since my hands and feet were tied, this made me lose my balance, and I fell over again. Oops. I was just about to fall flat on my face when I felt someone catch me. It was the boy who'd been standing next to Nagi, Echoes. I looked up at him. He nodded and undid my bonds. From this close, he had a rather gentle face. Thanks, I said, rubbing the rope burns. He proceeded to undo Tanaka-kun and Saotome-kun as well. We were tied pretty tightly, but he pulled the ropes off like he was playing cat's cradle. He looked frail, but he must have been pretty strong. For some reason, he reminded me of Christopher Lambert's Tarzan. His hair wasn't as long, but he gave off a similar air, kind of unworldly. Kirima-san, who is this guy? Saotome-kun asked, feeling a little jealous, I guess. Well, my boyfriend, Nagi replied, clearly lying. You can't fool me that easily. What are you doing here? Where's Naoko-san? I glared at Nagi again. Right, what did you do to Kamikishiro-san? Tanaka-kun yelled, turning on Nagi the moment he was free. I'm worried about Naoko myself, Nagi said painfully, not meeting his gaze. She clearly knew something. Tell us. We can help. No, you can't, Nagi snapped. Why not? This is not a normal situation. Unless you're screwed up like me, you can't possibly tackle it. She didn't hesitate at all to call herself screwed up. I shrank back a little at the strength of her words. Saotome-kun spoke up. Normal's still not good enough, huh? It was clear that he was quite bitter about something. He smiled a little. I looked at his face and for some reason felt the hairs on my neck stand up. It was just an ordinary, affable smile, but there was something unnaturally relaxed about it. Like when you're playing a video game for the 1000th time and a pattern you're particularly good at shows up. His smile was calm and ruthless. Nagi frowned. She must have said the same thing when she rejected him. Is Kamikishiro-san okay? Tanaka-kun insisted. Nagi said bluntly, bitterly. Shiro-kun, right? You should forget about her. What do you mean? Nagi said nothing else. Oh, we're stretching. How you holding up, everyone? Good? We're almost done. I think. Actually, no, maybe this does complete in just this volume. This story would be nice. Oh, I'm gonna sleep so good tonight. I can feel it already. Nagi and this Echoes guy let us out of the lecture hall. Go straight home, Nagi insisted. My leg is petrified. We are making progress. That's not progress. Please stretch, you idiot. Go straight home, Nagi insisted. I have to give the key back, I said sullenly. I wasn't finished sulking about not getting an explanation. Maybe I'll report you. Whatever, Nagi said airily. What's wrong with you? I retorted. What makes you think you have to be personally responsible for everything? Can't you just let things be? Okay, Kay. Now, committee president, Saotome-kun said, patting me on the shoulders. But, I insisted. But Saotome-kun was completely calm, the exact opposite of my state of mind. He spoke to me like he was soothing a fretful baby. There's nothing you can do. Kirima-san has things she needs to do. It was like he knew what those things were. He was definitely too relaxed. When I held my tongue, he turned back towards Nagi. At his steady gaze, Nagi awkwardly looked away. He spoke to her anyway. Kirima-san, I do understand. He took a mechanical pencil out of his pocket and spun it around his fingers very casually. We can never be satisfied with normal. Nagi stared at Saotome-kun, baffled. What? Looking back, I'm glad you rejected me. If I'd been with you, then I would have been her enemy when I met her. He sighed almost happily. Nagi frowned. When you met who? What are you talking about? She seemed confused. It looked like something about his turn of phrase had bothered her. A little smile crept up the edges of Saotome-kun's lips. In other words, I can't help but put you on the side of normal now. Put you on the side of normal now. His shoulders slumped. Then he moved like lightning. Before I even realized that he'd turned around, his arm was reaching out towards Echoes, who stood behind him. The mechanical pencil was in his hand. His aim was true. The tip of it stabbed deep into Echo's throat. Echo staggered backward. In an instant, Saotome Masami had buried the pencil all the way inside Echo's throat. Then he turned his attention back towards Nagi. Now, you're our enemy. A shadow fell towards us from above. We all looked up and saw a person dropping down from the school roof. Someone I knew. Yurihara Minako. She was looking right at Echoes, falling on him. No, attacking him. Blood gushing from his throat, Yurihara Minako cut him open from his shoulder to his waist with her mere fingers. Her nails were hideously long. She'd fallen more than 10 meters, but bounded upwards again like a grasshopper. There was no way she was human. I could do nothing but stand there with my mouth hanging open. Manticore! Nagi shrieked, following the leaping monster that looked like Yurihara Minako with her eyes. That cost her her life. Saotome Masami was standing right in front of her. She looked down just in time to see his hand slash downwards. The knife in his hand flashed. Nagi's voice never made it to words. It was a tiny little survival knife, the size of his palm, like a toy, but the blade was sharp and it sliced her throat open. I just changed teams, from the killed to the killers. I doubt anyone but Saotome Masami himself could understand the meaning behind his words. Kirima Nagi spun around, blood sprang from her throat. She fell over. His throat pierced, his torso cut in two. Echoes was still watching Nagi. He clearly wasn't human either. He dodged Yurihara Minako as she attacked again, and dashed to Nagi's side. Ignoring Saotome Masami, who backed away, Echoes scooped up Nagi's convulsing body and leapt away. He cleared the roof of the school in a single jump, vanishing into the night sky. He ran away? Chase him! This is your chance! Saotome Masami shouted, and Yurihara Minako reversed her course, leaping back the way she had come. I was dumbfounded. Beside me, Tanaka-kun wailed, then ran away screaming. Saotome Masami swung towards me. I was frozen stiff, and I couldn't move a muscle. He laughed. His smile was exactly the same as it had been a moment before, back when he was on our side. But this boy had just killed another human being. My knees rattled. I was shaking with fear. To be honest, the plan was for Kirima Nagi to kill me here, but oh well. This way was pretty fun, too, he said, grinning, like everything was normal. I could get addicted to doing things myself, he commented, walking towards me, moonlight glittering off the knife in his hand. As Echoes fled upwards to the roof, he realized that there was little power left in his body. The pencil from a moment before, instead of lead, it had been filled with a fatal poison created by the manticore. He was infected. He quickly pulled the pencil out of his throat, but it was too late. His feet and hands felt numb. Injuries that his massive regenerative powers should have healed instantly showed no signs of improving. But what had happened? That boy was the Manticore's ally? He hadn't been brainwashed. Echoes was sure of that. But why would a normal human be working with a monster? Echoes glanced down at Nagi. She was no longer breathing. Her pupils were dilated, nothing reflecting in her eyes. Her lips were half open, a stream of blood flowing out of them. She wasn't moving. This girl had protected everyone from the shadows, in secret, and it had killed her. Echo stared down at her ashen face. Which is it? He wondered inside. But only Kamikishiro Naoko could answer, and sadly she was gone. Yurihara Minako hit the roof behind him, giving chase. Echoes gathered Nagi up again and leapt off the roof. "You can't get away from me," the Manticore yelled, following him. She was smiling. Saotome Masami's plan was going perfectly. Echoes was running, but he was too badly wounded. He could not hope to hide. Why did they not just shine light on the shadow? GG easy. She was an imperfect copy, and would never have been his equal in a fair fight, but now the tables were turned. When she next caught sight of Echoes, he was abandoning Kirima Nagi's body in the bushes of the school garden. Clearly, he was trying to lighten the load, but it was too late. Grinning from ear to ear, the Manticore flung herself at the slow-moving Echoes. Her kick sent Echoes flying. There was a low thud from the school garden. I snapped out of it. Saotome Masami was right in front of me, waving a knife. I narrowly dodged it by rolling on the ground. I got my feet up from under me and tried to run, but my right foot slipped, and I fell again. Oh no, their Walkman headphones are on, they can't hear us. If I were Nagi, I would simply not die. Yeah, get good. I looked down. My hands were resting in a pool of Kirima Nagi's blood. Ah! And at last, I was able to scream. Saotome Masami came after me. I tried to spin around. My fingers touched something. It gleamed. It was the stun gun that Kirima Nagi had dropped. I snatched up the weapon. Saotome Masami scowled. Stay back! I pointed the weapon in his direction, squeezed the switch-like thing on the side. With a crackle, fireworks spat off the tip, but they were only a few centimeters long. It was but a tiny little light, and it didn't look all that threatening. Saotome Masami smiled, coldly. What are you going to do to me with that? That kind of weapon can't kill anyone. What are you people? That Yurihara Minako thing. What is it? She is Yurihara Minako, but she's not Yurihara Minako. The original's dead. She's the Manticore. What are you gonna do, stab me? Said Manstad. What are you gonna do, zap me, class president? Gets zapped. Manticore? I could swear I'd heard that name before, in a computer game or something. I'm sure it meant man-eater. Oh god, that meant Naoko-san was... Saotome Masami saw my expression, guessed what I was thinking. He grinned. Exactly. She's already been digested. He said it so normally, without a shred of guilt. And all the other people who vanished? Mostly. Well, there may be a few girls who just ran away on their own. And Kirima Nagi was looking for you. That's why she captured us. But she thought we had nothing to do with it, so she released us without realizing that one of her enemies was hiding among us. You used us as cover, didn't you? You had your uses. She was a fool. She allied herself with Echoes, but it never occurred to her that his enemy might have allies as well. Amogus? Saotome, you're being kind of sus. His complete composure put a match to the flames of anger inside of me. They soon banished my fear. So you lied when you said you loved her? No, that was the truth, but I no longer need her. Still, I wasn't going to let the Manticore have her. No, I wanted to kill her with my own hands. Do you know how good that feels? How the hell would I know that? I'm so sick of Among Us. I thrust my weapon towards him. He dodged it easily. Beautiful, President. I love your eyes. I love strong-willed, powerful eyes. Grr. You little... I swung my weapon wildly, not getting anywhere near him. Then something passed over my head. It was Echoes. He slammed into the ground. He'd been thrown there. He was torn to pieces. While I was distracted, Saotome Masami kicked my hand. Ah! I yelped, but the stun gun was already flung out of my reach. From behind me, Yurihara Minako yelled, Enough, Saotome-kun. I'll finish things. Okay, Saotome Masumi replied, picking up the stun gun and stepping away. I usually don't thank followers just in case, but thank you Doomer Goth GF Mommy Milkers for the follow. I ran over to Echo's. He was a wreck. His right arm was half torn off his shoulder, and there were holes all over his body. He was covered in blood. Echoes? I said, pulling him upright. He opened his eyes feebly. A pained moan escaped his purple lips. President, it's no use asking him to save you. He's almost dead, Yurihara Minako, the manticore, said, laughing. That wasn't so hard. You might even have been able to win without any tricks, Saotome Masumi said, evidently enjoying himself. Excuse me. I never thought he would be this weak, the manticore replied, amused. I'm sure he used to be stronger. I glared at her. You aren't human. You're both devils. As he lay dying, Echoes heard the girl holding him shout, You aren't human. Not human. She meant that they weren't fit to be called human. He still didn't understand. Which were humans? Humans had captured him for being different and forcefully and quite mercifully studied his body. Humans had made the manticore, but the people who had saved him, the cloaked boy in the black hat, Kamikishiro Naoko, and Kirima Nagi, were all human too. Which was it? Which was the truth? You're all stupid, aren't you? The manticore laughed, mocking the girl. I never was human, and Saotome-kun is nothing like you foolish humans. Devils? Fine with me. I think I like being called a devil. You will be destroyed. What a wooden line. The girl shouted back, not at all cowed. I will die here, and so will this man, but there will be other people who will stand in your way. No matter where you hide, there will be people who can't ignore the distortions in the world that you're trying to create. And you will be found again, just like Kirima Nagi found you. Big tears were running down her cheeks. She was sad. Because she was about to die? Then why was she holding him so tightly? It was as if she was protecting him from the manticore, like Kamikishiro Naoko had when she found him wounded in town. Humans. He had no more time. He had to make a choice. Like Kirima Nagi? The manticore chuckled. I think I'll be her next. I didn't know what she meant. I had to ask. What do you mean? Just that I'll change from Yurihara Minako into Kirima Nagi. At first, I couldn't comprehend this. My mind went blank. Then I was horrified. What? She's an ideal specimen. She's crazy, so nobody will say anything if I behave a little oddly. She's rich and has a vast information network set up. It's perfect. There will be a commotion when Yurihara Minako vanishes, which I would prefer to avoid, but the benefits far outweigh that. I shuddered, turning to look at Saotome Masumi. He had said that he no longer needed her, because he had a new girlfriend now. Saotome Masumi stared back at me, expressionless. I had no words. As for you, Nitoki Kei, the manticore continued, the world will never know you've died. We will alter you and make a slave of you. You'll be moving around, but you'll have no heart. Even if you meet a boy you like, you'll feel nothing. I was horrified again. I could see it. Hikage. The manticore disguised as Nagi, and me standing beside her as her slave. I could see myself on gate duty, Nagi beside me, while pointed her to her next meal. Even if the boy I had once loved and his pretty girlfriend came, I would think nothing, simply greet them mechanically. And that's not all. The manticore's terrifying words gave me a glimpse of higher purpose. She and Saotome Masumi weren't killing for their own self-preservation. This was just one part of their plan to take control of the world from us humans. But if they graduated and went out of school, what would happen to the world? She came closer to me. I hugged Echo's body tightly. Then, Echo slowly raised his wounded arm. It was shaking. His fist wasn't clenched or open. His fingers just hung there limply. He pointed his hand at the manticore. What? What's that mean? You still think you can do something to stop me? The manticore smirked. But Echoes wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the stars in the sky behind her. And he suddenly spoke, using actual words. Not to anybody, but to the sky above. My body into information, transmit to source, and the air around me filled with a white light. Ah. That evening, a strange electrical disturbance was recorded in the area. Satellite broadcast monitors all went white, computer hard drives were cleared of all data, and a multitude of other similar unnatural phenomena were encountered. The The television stations and newspaper offices were deluged with questions and complaints. There were several investigations launched with no real satisfactory results, but a number of witnesses said, about that time, I could swear I saw the sky glow. It was just for a second, but it was like a bright light launched from the ground into the sky. But these reports were never connected to anything, and were eventually buried and forgotten. I know what I saw. Echoes changed into light, and that light swallowed the manticore. And a second before it did, Saotome Masumi leapt in front of the manticore, shielding her with his body. I don't know what he was thinking, why he was on the side of the manticore, and frankly, I don't want to know. But there was one thing that I did have to admit. He might have killed a number of people for the manticore, but that casual disregard for life sure included his own. Saotome Masumi was swept up in the torrent of light, his body blown away, not a trace of it left. He was disintegrated. No, he was erased. But moments before Echoes had self-destructed, the manticore had been flung aside by her companion, out of the beam's path. Even as I was flung aside by the shockwave, I desperately struggled to grasp the situation. But no, I didn't understand anything. From my point of view, there was absolutely no way for me to grasp the first thing about what had just happened. What the hell was Echoes? How could something that looked like a human turn into light and explode? And what was that information that he was transmitting? To who? I had simply no way of knowing. Thank you for the sip. The sippy. That. What's happening? I hit the ground and rolled, screaming with frustration inside. When I finally managed to stop myself, there was no fight left, or there was no light left around me. Grunting in pain, I sat up, looked in front of me, and gasped. She was standing there alone. Half of her body was burned black, and smoke was rising off of it. The uniform she'd been wearing had been blown away, and beneath the moonlight, every inch of her slim, limber body was exposed. She was gazing blankly at the sky. She didn't seem to be looking at anything. Excuse me. Her lips trembled, like they were scrambling to form words that never emerged. There was no expression on her face. It had been replaced by emptiness. The face of someone that had lost something that they valued more than their own life. As if half of her body had been torn away. As if her capacity for joy had been pulled up by the roots. She looked as if she could no longer perceive any meaning, like there was nothing left for her. Ow! Somewhere, her endless scream turned into a howl. It was the sound of her heart breaking. The scream seemed to shake the moon. I sat and watched, nailed to the spot. But then I realized that was the last thing I should be doing. Gotta run. As I tried to get to my feet, the gravel scrunched beneath me. Like a mechanical response, the manticore's battered face swung towards me. Our eyes met. A shiver ran down my spine. Even by the light of the moon, I could tell her eyes were blood red. The whites were completely soaked in crimson hostility. You die, she howled. I'll kill every last one of you. As if her voice had been a trigger, I shot to my feet and ran for it. Naturally, she came after me. I was running, but from the sound of it, she was walking, dragging one leg. But the sound was getting closer. Wah! At the time, I was convinced that fear had finally driven me round the bend. I was hearing things. I could hear a melody coming through the bushes in front of me, an impossible, unnatural melody. Someone was whistling a tune that should never be whistled. Wagner, or whatever Corbin said to pronounce it as. It's a German title. Insert German here. Unnatural or not, at that moment I had no other straws to grasp at. I ran for my life towards the sound. When I was almost there, my leg slipped. Ah! I screamed, pitching forward, falling flat on my face. I smacked my forehead on the ground, and everything went black for a moment. The whistling stopped. I could hear the sounds of the manticore's footsteps, several times louder than it had been a moment before. I spun around, and the manticore's hand was already reaching towards me. This is it. I'm going to die. But just as that thought crossed my mind, whoosh! It was the sound of something cutting through the air. And then the manticore's hand flew off with a grotesque slicing sound. It had been severed from her body. It was now spinning through the air. What? I saw something flash, like string. It twisted like it was alive and wrapped around the manticore's neck. It tightened. The manticore's expression changed. She snatched at her throat with both hands, but she only had one, and the fingers of it tried to get a grip on the string wrapped around her throat. It wasn't a string. It was a horrifically thin metal wire. Ah, I thought. I had my answer. The reason I'd suddenly tripped and fallen was because this wire had been strung across my path. One end of the wire appeared to be tied around a tree. The other end led into the shadow of the school building. When I looked in that direction, I felt my brains pour out of my ears. "It can't be!" I shouted. There was a figure there, leaning backwards, pulling on the wire with black gloves. It wore a cape and a black hat shaped like a pipe. It was the very creature that all the girls in my class had been gossiping about. "The wrist was charred enough for me to cut through, but the neck seems to be stronger," it said. The androgynous voice, neither male nor female, was exactly as the rumors said. But the face was...
Miyashita-san?
Yes, it was clearly that of my classmate, Miyashita Toka. "Currently, I am Boogiepop. She? No, he said clearly, in a boy's voice. Gurgled the manticore, eyes widening in surprise. She was no more able to take this in than I was. Mr. Dippity. The wire was sunk deep into the skin of her throat. She was struggling to loosen it with her fingers, but it was cutting the fingers instead, and they were bleeding. "You call yourself the Manticore?" Boogiepop said quietly. "You're much stronger than a human, but I can make free use of the strength that humans unconsciously keep in reserve to avoid exceeding the limits of their flesh, since I am only borrowing this body." Then he suddenly shouted, "Now, Shiro-kun, shoot it!" I had no time to ponder what he meant. No sooner had the words left his mouth than an arrow pierced the Manticore's chest. I knew that arrow. It was a Duralumin arrow, the kind that the archery team used. I spun around, and behind me was Tanaka-kun, who had not run away after all, but was holding a sturdy glass fiber bow, aimed at me. No, at the Manticore. Her head was trapped. She couldn't dodge. I wonder what the Manticore thought at that moment, when she knew that she had lost. She didn't look at the arrow in her chest, or at Boogiepop, or at the archer. I saw an expression steal over that empty face. To me, it looked like relief. "Shoot her head," Boogiepop said, showing no mercy. He killed her when she was at her most beautiful, before she had a chance to grow ugly, killed her without pain, just as the stories had said. Tanaka-kun let go. The arrow was flung off the bowstring and hit Yurihara Minako's face dead center, smashing her head. For an instant, what looked like cracks ran all down her body, and then she crumbled, changing into a purple smoke. For an instant... the smoke drifted in all directions, carried away on the wind. A little bit of it drifted past my nose. It smelled of horribly thick, fresh blood. I couldn't stand up. Tanaka-kun came running over. Are you okay?" Yeah. I shook my head, trying to recover some clarity. But Miyashita-san walked in front of me again in that Boogiepop costume, and my thoughts scattered again. "What is that?" I asked Tanaka-kun, clinging to him like a toddler. He shook his head. "I don't know. He stopped me on my way back from practice, offered to help. You know him?" "I kind of know of him." Boogiepop undid the wire from around the tree and headed to the bushes where Kirima Nagi lay. The Manticore said Echoes was surprisingly weak. "I wonder why," he muttered. He, or was it a she after all, kicked Kirima Nagi. Nagi had been killed, her throat sliced open, but her body shook and she sat up. She'd come back to life. All right. "He gave you part of his life. You've escaped death again." Tanaka-kun and I could do nothing but gape. Nagi moaned and clutched her forehead. She'd lost a lot of blood and must have been anemic. "Hello, Fire Witch," Boogiepop said. "You again," Nagi replied, not at all surprised. She sighed. "If you were out, why didn't you come sooner? Your actions finally allowed me to uncover the nature of the danger. I gotta be me all the damn time, but you only bother coming out when shit hits the fan. You selfish bastard." "Don't say that," he replied. It sounded like they'd known each other for years. Is it over?" "Yes, thanks to Echo's sacrifice and the committee president's courage." "I see." Nagi tried to stand, but wavered and fell over again. Boogiepop made no effort to help her, instead coming back in our direction. "I leave her in your hands. I'll take care of the cleanup," he told us. We made no response. Boogiepop picked up the Manticore's hand from the ground. He looked up at me and made a strange expression, narrowing one eye like he was smiling, but not quite. It was like he was playing dumb. "Ni Toki-kei, you certainly do have a strong will. It's because of people like you that the world manages to remain a halfway decent place. In the world's stead, I thank you." It was like a speech from a play. I had no idea what it meant. Leaving me standing there stunned, he fled like the wind, turning the corner behind the gym and vanishing from sight. And that was how it ended. take a sippy. But how did Boogiepop become a rumor? He's supposed to be a mysterious figure. His identity is secret. Who started all the legends about him? I asked Kirima Nagi the next day after class. Probably Miyashita Toka herself, Nagi answered. We were alone in the room. Everyone else had already left. Eh? What do you mean? Miyashita Toka is unaware that she has an alter ego known as Boogiepop inside of her, but she knows it unconsciously. You know, like how you talk about yourself, but say it's a friend of yours. Same principle. She just told other people about her other self. That's it? You should probably ask Suima about it. Well, not specifically, but she can explain it way better than I can. I don't really get it. I don't know much about that bastard. I don't know much about that mustard. I don't know much about that bastard myself, she sighed. Did everyone make a fuss when Yurihara Minako didn't show? The teacher asked if any of us knew anything, but nobody answered. It's too soon for anyone to realize she's actually missing, so not much is going on yet. But for a straight-A student like her, skipping's enough to get the gossip going. Huh. I'd called Yurihara-san's house the day before. Yes, he did. That's exactly what he did. He camped. I'd called Yurihara-san's house the day before, but the answering machine led me to believe that both of her parents were off on business trips. Nobody knew she hadn't come home. It looked as though the Manticore had deliberately chosen to make her move while they were out of town. But all hell would break loose in a day or two. Yurihara Minako would cause a lot more problems for the school than any of the other girls had. Saotome Masumi would be buried under her shadow. His parents probably already knew he hadn't come home, but he was a boy, so they were unlikely to worry all that much if he was out all night. When was the real Yurihara... When was she replaced? Not sure, but a pretty long time ago. She'd always been missing. It was just that up until now, we simply hadn't noticed that she was gone. I guess that's true. We both hung our heads. It was a strange feeling. We couldn't tell anyone the truth. If we did, it would just make things worse for all of us. And even then, if word about Echoes got out to the institutions that made the Manticore, it would just be asking for trouble. So, it all ultimately amounts to... So, all it ultimately amounts to is nothing? It's better that way. Yeah. We stood up. Most of the other students had gone home, and the sports teams and clubs were all in full session. There was nobody roaming the halls or stopped at the shoe lockers. We headed for the gates, and the girl on gate duty was very happy to see me. Ah, President, thank God you're here. Could you take over for me for a minute? I really gotta pee. I smiled and nodded, and she bolted off into the school. Everyone likes you, Nagi grinned. Or likes using me, I grimaced. I remembered all the times that Kamikishiro Naoko had talked me into fudging the numbers to make her on time, which is how we got to be friends in the first place. Naoko-san is really... I said softly, suddenly horribly sad. Yeah, I think so, Nagi whispered sorrowfully. When Tanaka-kun had left us the day before, he'd said, I don't know how to say this, but I feel like I should thank you all for Kamikishiro-san. Thank you. He was almost crying. Tanaka-kun, what did you really think of Naoko-san? I'd asked. He looked at me sadly. Truthfully, if we had found her, I would have told her that I wanted to break up. But now, I'm not so sure. Was all I said. I couldn't figure out what I should say to her lover, Kimura Akio. We'd probably never speak to each other. If someday someone were to tell him, that would be... But we all had to return to our daily routine, just exactly as things had been before. Naoko said something strange once, Nagi said, looking up at the sky. She said Echoes was an angel, that the Lord of the Heavens had ordered him to investigate and make the final decision on whether mankind should be allowed to live, or if it should be destroyed. He came here to find out if humans were a benevolent existence or a malevolent one. If we were the latter, he would end our history. I was taken aback. An angel? I mean, I'm pretty sure she was reading a lot into this. She had a tendency to blow everything out of proportion. My guess is Echoes and Manticore were both failed experiments in biotechnology. But if she was right... We're still here. Looks like we're off the hook this time, she smiled sadly. But I couldn't smile. She had to say that. She couldn't let her friend's death be in vain. but I couldn't smile. Nagi hadn't seen the end of Echoes, but I had, clearly. That light had made it as if Sao Tome Masami had never existed in the first place. It had turned the nearly immortal Manticore into a burnt crisp. That was no biotechnological experiment. It had beamed itself into space. But if something like that were fired at the Earth over and over again, then the one who really saved the world wasn't me, wasn't Boogiepop. Ultimately, it was that lonely little love-struck girl who was nice to Echoes, and we can't even thank her for it now. Nagi sounded almost irritated. I had no answer for her. I just stared silently at the sky. It seemed so far away. As Nagi and I stood there staring absently into the clear blue sky, a boy and a girl came walking together towards us. When I saw them, I couldn't stop myself from exclaiming, "Ah!" One of them was Miyashita Toka. The other one was a third-year student with a promising career in design that I'd fallen for and had my heart broken by, Takeda Keiji-senpai. Ah. He looked a little nervous when he saw me, so I spoke to him first to show him that he needn't worry about it. "Oh, senpai," I said as cheerfully as I could manage. "Hey," he said vaguely. Suddenly, Nagi was standing in front of Miyashita-san. So you're Miyashita Toka," she said. It seemed that this was her first time meeting this side of her. Yes? Miyashita-san said, nodding in a cute little voice as far removed from Boogiepop's boyish tones as possible. "I'm Kirima. Nice to meet you," Nagi said and held out her hand. To an outsider, it must have looked like the school delinquent was out to get her. "Hey," Takeda-senpai said, stepping up to protect her. But Miyashita-san shook her head. "You too," she said, shaking Nagi's hand. Perhaps she understood this unconsciously as well. "See ya," Nagi said, giving her a wry grin. Takeda Kaiji, shut up. The two of them went through the gates, and I let out a big sigh, and stared up at the sky again. I wasn't able to look Miyashita-san in the eye. I tried to smile at her, but I just couldn't. There are too many things that just weren't clear. It should be simple to smile at someone, but sometimes it's a terribly difficult and painful thing to do. It's so hard to smile. What do you mean? I shook my head. Never mind, it was nothing. Nagi looked at me dubiously, but eventually she looked back up at the sky and began to whistle. It was a song I knew. I sang along softly. "Life is brief, young maiden. Fall in love. Before the crimson bloom fades from your lips, before the tides of passion cool within your hips, for those of you who know no tomorrow." The autumn sky was so bright that it made my eyes water. It'll be winter soon, I thought. Boogiepop and others closed. Second break and we're still going? I mean, we just finished, so... What's up, Thunderbird? How's it going? Well, we don't have to read the afterword. We're done! We finished it! What do you think? Who's your favorite character? I'm a big Naoko fan, a big Manic Pixie Dream Girl blonde GF fan. Damn, Takako, you sure did read that book. Yeah, I sure do know how to read. Just barely, but I do. I like Nagi. Yeah, me too. Everyone likes Nagi. I should probably read the first half now. Hey, the VOD is still up. You don't even have to read it. You can just listen. I don't actually know how to read. Jesus. Finch. Well, that's why I'm here, apparently. Nitoki is good. She is good. She's a good girl. I like her. I'm really big on non-chronological stories. Things that seem confusing at first, then you get to see other perspectives and the timeline kind of crosses together in unexpected ways. I like that kind of stuff. Thanks, bud. Always got my back. Hey, what is an Oshi for? Oh, big stretch. Do you see the, I like Boogiepop from the 5 seconds we had this time here. Oh, you'd love Boogiepop. You would love them. They're absolutely your type. Oh, I too am a Nolan fan. A what fan? A what fan? Making assumptions, the correct assumption. It's not an assumption if you've said it. Well, I still have some work to do tonight, so I probably should wrap it up here. Okay, bye. This book would be a proper fantastic series, but damn. I mean, fuck, how many volumes are out? I think it's still going. Hold on. Boogiepop series. Boogiepop is best characterized as young adult fiction and is credited with starting the light novel trend in Japan. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. That this was the first like real light novel. So that's cool. Let me see. When did it come out? This book came out in 1998. And now... God, I can't even count. They're still publishing as of May 2019. There are... Let's see. "23 volumes, apparently." You can only blame Boogiepop. Boogiepop's as old as me. What? May 2019? I did, yeah. In Japan, anyway. I'm pretty sure they released, Let me see. How did they release them? Seven Seas did... Yeah, Boogiepop Omnibus Volumes 1 to 3. And then they did 4 to 6, and then they just stopped. I don't really know why. I don't think they did any more than that. I think. And they brought over like some of the manga. Yeah, isn't that crazy? You're a man baby? I don't know if you should be wearing that on your sleeve. I don't know if that's like better. Maid counting ASMR. Let's goop! Damn, Takako, you're gonna read 23 whole novels for us? Yeah, I'll become fluent in Japanese just to read you volume 7 and on. Wow. Oh, my eyes are watering. I still have to read the rest of Spice and Wolf. Hey, you and me both. I read volume 1 and was like, oh, it's pretty good. Like that. And then I did not read more. But it's a series that's on the list. The first Law trilogy. I'm not sure what that is. I've never heard of that one. Sasuga Meido. Just what you'd expect from the maid. It'd be like that. So we're all behind on Spice and Wolf, I see. And I haven't even finished the books. Yeah. I think I have like one person that's caught up on the Spice and Wolf novels. Oh, people actually read Spice and Wolf and not just look at fan art. Yeah, like all of my friends have read at least some of Spice and Wolf Cream. I think you're the odd one out. You have the giant-ass tome? I got the giant-ass tome as a friend for a gift and got it signed, and now I wish I'd kept it for myself. I thought Spice and Wolf was when you draw lewd pics of Okami Mio. Mallard, I'm gonna fucking throttle you. In Minecraft. I know 2 people that have finished Spice and Wolf. Holy shit. Actually, wait, Meow Tears, are you here? You finished it, right? I think? Noxer, I don't know if you're caught up. I also don't know if they're listening. But... how many books is it? Spice and Wolf? What, like 18? 19? Hold on. Let's find out. I know he's working on the sequel, Parchment and something, I think. Wait a minute. I looked up Spice and Wolf. Audience reviews, 1 star. Even though it is not a typical isekai light novel, the author, Isuna Hasekura, has little or no knowledge of how real economics and monetary policies function. In a devaluation, a currency becoming of lesser value, there can be no profit from acquiring it. Possible profit may surge from purchasing goods and services. Holy shit, he keeps going! What the wait. Possible profit may surge from purchasing goods and services in the short term that have not raised their prices and cost to reflect the devaluation. The author uses this as a reason for the main character Lawrence and Hollow to be persecuted and for Hollow to be kidnapped. It's nonsensical, illogical, and senseless to use these reasons. What? If Hollow is such a weakling and fragile character, Lawrence would have never in real life used her as a decoy just to be easily captured, but the main reason they are being captured is to stop them from making a profit with the knowledge of a current monetary devaluation. It just doesn't make sense. I find it unbelievable that over 2.5 million copies of this light novel are reported to be sold if the story arcs are so weakly and thoughtlessly written. This is surrounded by 5-star reviews. Holy shit. Please send it to you. I mean, I just googled Spice and Wolf, and the box on the right has a bunch of novels, and it's the first one, audience reviews. Oh, 5 stars. Well, it's been a while since I've watched good anime. My first expression on Spice and Wolf, that it's boring, though. When I watched the first episode, it was full of economics and politics in it. But as I continued watching it, the more I appreciated the series. No. The season 1 greatly good, but in season 2 is absolutely weird because the heck she doesn't mad at all, then crashed local marketing for dual purpose. The manga quality is best as the light novel, 9 out of 10. Just make a good ending. Holy shit! What's with these reviews? What the fuck? Picky think. Yeah. This is great. I want to frame these. Print them out and frame them. Very good. Spice and Wolf bad, actually. By the way, those last two still rated at 5 stars. When I think of Spice and Wolf, I think of the author talking about when the manga came out, and he was like, yeah, Hollow's supposed to be really, really flat. That's how I made her. And when the manga artist talked to me, I was afraid that Kome Kato would draw Hollow's boobs too big. And I was right. They did. What the fuck is wrong with you? Hasekura. Akikage, don't make it a copy pasta. We have to make sure the boobs aren't too big. Oh my god. This is gonna become a copy. I'm saving this. Kopipa. Kopipe? Kopipe? Copy paste? Yeah? I'm saving this. That's crazy. Well, that's... We've made our mark tonight, apparently. The Boogiepop really was the smiles we made along the way. But Richter, Boogiepop doesn't smile. Yeah, so now that you've read this, you can actually watch Boogiepop Phantom and be totally, like, in the know. Maybe... I do have the DVDs. What if I just streamed it? It'd be fun. I want to rewatch Boogiepop. It's only 12 episodes. Could watch, like, 4 a night or something. It'd be fun. What the fuck do you mean there's no profit in devaluation? Are you stupid? Excuse me, this man knows his economics, apparently. He knows them better than Hasekura, so... You'd be down? Yeah, that'd be really fun. 5 people found this out. 5 people believed him when he said he knew what he was talking about. Finch getting real fucking mad about economics in chat. But yeah, no, to finish my thought from earlier, you see now how good the mouth tracking is, the mouth motions and everything. Matches up with the way my mouth is shaped when I talk. And now you understand why I was so frustrated during my 6-month stream when it would not cooperate. You get it now. I don't know what happened. I didn't really change anything. I restarted my computer. That's what I did. I turned it off, and then I turned it back on. And now it works. Great. Wonderful. Just what we like to see. Of course. Sasuga. Sasuga meido. Well, let us find... First of all, I'm very glad that you liked it. Big Boogiepop fan, and I think because it's got kind of a weird name, a lot of people who might enjoy it kind of put it off. But I don't think so. I think it's very good. I know Boogiepop says something about like, oh, I'm like Bubbles, but from what I remember, Karuno said something about like if I'm remembering right, it's been a long time, but I think he said something about like how he wanted to write like normal popular like pop novels that people liked, but no matter what he did, he would always end up writing something twisted. So he would always put like a boogie in his pop or whatever. So that's the tone he wanted to go with for the series. Something that was supposed to be like widely edible as a form of media, but ended up being twisted anyway. You got boogie in my pop. You got pop in my boogie. Yeah. Getting back to work now. Good stream, Takako. Thank you. Have a good night, Thunder. Work hard at work. Ganbare, ganbare. Let's see. Who should we raid? Well, Mimi is doing art. Could always send you over to her. She's always comfy. You down for that? Do you think Boogiepop likes Pilk? I think Boogiepop could not wrap his little head around what Pilk is. I think he would say humans are so interesting and then not drink it. Y'all Pegnog is gonna happen. Will you shut the fuck up? Will you stop bringing up Pegnog? Onegai shimasu. The Ganbare has renewed my strength. Maid encouragement. Fight dayo. I'm drinking milk. Okay, it's time to raid. Okay, that's enough, I think. We're raiding Mimi. So, as always, here are my socials in case you're new here. Here are your raid messages. Or Soda, sorry. Thanks for streaming. Have a nice night. Oh, you as well, Reddy. Hope you enjoyed it. There are your raid messages. Thank you for coming along tonight. The next time we will meet up will be on Thursday when I am I'm finishing up the spooky media the spooky media share. So I'm looking forward to it. I'll put the blanket back on and everything. This time with a new maid. So, as always, otsukare, oyasumi. Have a good night. Let's do our best.